like to call to order the redevelopment agency meeting. This is July 17th, 2019. The first item of business is approve the minutes of June 26th, 2019 as presented by Jamie Brooks. Any discussion to that item or a motion? Councilmember Burton.
Move to approve the minutes.
And Councilmember McConaughey, second. We have a motion by Councilmember Burton, a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Any discussion to that motion? I'm sorry, they are board members, not council members. Okay, business items. So do we need a vote on that, Jamie? Or do we need to, can we do aye? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Business item 2B, discussion and possible action regarding resolution number 19-217, authorizing the purchase of parcels 26-02-200-035-0000, 26-01-200-036-000, and 26-02-200-040 within the project area boundaries of CDA number 2, Jeremy Olson.
Mayor, could you repeat those numbers for, never mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Item 2B on the agenda is a purchase for $7 million of about 30 acres of property at 90th and 56 West. There'll be 3 payments made for the purchase, one at closing here in the next 2 weeks or so, then one in January 2020 and one in January 21. That's essentially the transaction. I'm available for any questions.
Any board members have questions for Jeremy? Seeing none, then we'll open it up for board discussion and or a motion. Board Member Jacob.
I move to approve resolution number 217.
Board Member McConaughey.
Second with clarification, 19-217.
Sure, there's just not a 19 on my digital copy, but.
Yes, 217. I believe.
19-217, yes.
We have a motion by Board Member Jacob and a second by Board Member McConaughey. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote on that one.
Councilmember, Board Member Burton.
Aye.
Chair Riding,
Yes.
Board Member Jacob,
Yes.
Board Member McConaughey,
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
and Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll now adjourn. Motion to adjourn the redevelopment agency and convene city council.
So moved.
And the second, council.
Second.
Motion by Board Member McConaughey and seconded by Board Member Whitelock. Discussion to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So we'll call to order city council meeting, and we've asked Corbin Lee if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Before we begin citizen comments tonight, I just want to note that there are 2 public hearing items that are going to be postponed until July 31st. So if anyone is here on the Ochre Mountain Resort item, that will be continued to the 31st. And with that, we'll open this up for citizen comments this evening, reminding that you have 3 minutes to address City Council on any item that is on the agenda or something that you would like to bring up to them. If you could identify who you are when you come up, please do so. With that, I will open up citizen comments for anyone in the audience that would like to address City Council?
Good afternoon. Appreciate you taking my, or taking the time to hear me out. I've already spoken with you, Mayor, and also have spoken with you, Corbin, as well. My name is Mike Tyler. I actually live in Taylorsville. I had previously lived in West Jordan. I've spoken about my issues I have with the city and the police department. I have spoken with other agencies. I do not have all the tallies and statistics as of yet because we're still waiting on those to come back. I do only have one in regards to one agency. Why I'm here tonight, first and foremost, are the fact that I feel that the West Jordan Police Department is patrolling Bangerter Highway at a higher percentage rate than what they should, and they're placing themselves in a position of danger. This was brought to the attention of Randy Coy, and I also spoke with you, Mayor, and I also spoke with you, Corbin. A police officer had been sitting in the Gore area facing southbound in the northbound lanes of 7800 South going northbound on Bangerter Highway. With a lot of traffic trying to merge from the two-lane on-ramp to Bangerter Highway, he was in a very dire predicament of causing an accident with very minimal space on each side. So I yelled out my window and said, "You're in a dangerous position." A couple minutes later, he was tailing me and he pulled me over just north of the 70th South overpass. And we had a discussion there, and he asked me whether or not I had a problem. I said, "Yes, I do. You're causing a public impedance." Now, what I am here in regards to, and we will discuss this further with staff and as well in future councils when I have all the other statistics, is I feel that we need to really look at the numbers in place about what resources are being used and how often. So with that, I know that I've just got just a few minutes left. Do you have any questions of me?
Typically, we don't respond.
Okay. So, but that's it. I will come back and I'd like to have further discussions with staff, and also if you guys would like to have another discussion privately, or we can open this up for city advisement, I would love to do that. I do not like driving through the city of West Jordan ever because of the issues that I have with the West Jordan Police Department. I've spoken with them on numerous times, and I understand that Chief Ken Wallenstein is here, and if he would like to have a discussion with me further, I would be more than happy to. But we do need to find some resolve and find out where the resources are best utilized and whether or not this is actually a revenue-based versus actual public safety. Now, in one department that I have received, since 2016, this is a combination of accidents and law enforcement. Their contacts went from 304 in 2016 down to 119 year-to-date currently. And that's one agency. And they said that they rarely patrol Bangerter Highway. So when I actually get the information from the West Jordan City as well, we'll come up with some statistics on that, because I would like to actually find some resolution to this. Because if it is a public safety issue, great. But is it an actual criminal, or is it actually other traffic related? Because accidents, according to this one agency, they have dropped dramatically, especially with the brand new overpasses and how the infrastructure on Bangerter Highway is being redone. So I appreciate your time tonight and look forward to hearing from you folks at another point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address City Council this evening? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Taylor Roth. I've talked before in this forum. I live over in the Brookside. Trailers 801-928-3941 is my phone number. And I brought this up with one of our council members just in kind of passing before City Council convened, so I'm sure it's already going to get handled. But I wanted to make sure that it was on the books properly. In the last couple of weeks, as I've been walking along Redwood Road, I've noticed that there seems to be an increase of debris on the side of the road. Most of it not necessarily related to cars. So cigarette butts and pieces of plastic. There's even been like underwear and shorts hanging out. I don't know if this is post-parade trash that somehow got missed, or if it who's doing this to our city, but I know it's not me. I clean up a few pieces here and there every time I complain about it, because I figure if I have time to complain, I have time to clean. But in particular, I'll note that in front of the Trax property, on the west-facing, so on the east side of the road, there's the big lights, the black columns that have the street lights. Well, they have the banners that hang out for when we have celebrations in the city and stuff. One of those, pretty much directly across from the council building, has a worn-out tire just hanging on one of the banner stands. So I don't know if we've got some resources that we can put towards cleaning up, at least in particular this kind of city block between the Trax line there and the next street over the cross street with, is that 7800 that runs by Vasa and High Point Coffee or something? Yeah. Okay. So that section of Redwood just in front of the city council building, I would definitely like to see in better shape, especially because it is right in front of our city council building. So it seems like if we can't even clean up in front of our own council building, then what does the rest of West Jordan look like? So I believe it sends a wrong impression. That's all I have, and I'm glad to see progress being made. On another note, on the park finally, and the playground for the kids going in. So thank you very much for all the work that each of you is putting in to keep our city in good shape. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address City Council? Please come forward.
Mary, there it goes. I just actually wanted to come up and give a couple kudos, because I think we get too much complaining sometimes and not enough kudos, especially if you hit some of the Facebook pages that we have out there. Jamie, really thank you so much for all of your input, your answering questions, and tolerance, I would say, from all the candidates that are right now asking many, many questions, and you have been amazing with that. And then Brian, I wanted to thank you and compliment your staff. The parks are looking great. I understand of your limited ability to get things done, but the guys are out there doing a great job and being really professional every time I see them, and going out of their way to make sure that the time they are there, they're spending and they're doing a quality job. So I just want to put those things out there. And then just kind of a personal thank you to the mayor. We had a little bit of a microburst in the park over 4th of July. Some of you may have seen that post. But my tent completely got destroyed. It was just a good thing I wasn't underneath it. But also wanted to thank Calvin, who was there, and they came over and we all worked together and got things done. And it's really a good prime example of if people work together, we'll get things done. So I just want to thank you guys for that.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address City Council this evening? Seeing none, I will close the citizen comments and move to communications. We'll start with our Assistant City Manager.
Council members, you should have each received a copy of the budget book. Ms. Steck won't say it, but she worked very hard, her staff, to pull this together and give it to you in the first council meeting after the new fiscal year. Budget book looks great. I just want to thank her for her hard work in getting this budget book to you in a very timely manner. Secondly, we have comments tonight from Chief Maxfield and from Brian Clegg, in that order.
Council, I just wanted to give you an update and kind of report back on the 4th of July and the incidents that we had as a fire department. I pulled some statistics basically from July 2nd through the 6th. fireworks were legal to shoot off from the 2nd through the 5th, but we went to the 6th. During that time, we had 34 actual fire calls, which can be anything from an alarm to complaints or actual fires. Of those 34, 13 were actually fires, and 5 of those were in garbage cans or rubbish bins. So I guess the takeaway message from that is to make sure that the fireworks are out before they're put in there. But it was a relatively quiet 4th of July for us, and we didn't have any major structural damage or anything like that with the fires. So just wanted to report that back. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Chris.
if I may real quick. Especially the garbage can fires, that's kind of interesting to me. I guess my request would be, is that something that could be put on the fire department's Facebook page and kind of blast that out before the 24th so that people kind of think about that?
Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll make sure we get that out there.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Couple things tonight, Mayor and Council, just to update. I think a lot of you have seen the playground is now under construction. Hopefully be done with that in the next couple months. I wanted to give you an update on an issue that staff and we've been working on this week concerning HVAC systems. And Chief, I need to apologize to you now. They've had to endure some high temperatures in the Justice Center. We had our cooling system go down. We've had mechanical companies come out. We finally got 2 legs of it running today. Moving forward, though, there's going to be some extensive costs coming to get the other 2 legs. We're waiting on some pricing to come back. It's going to take a big hit to the facility's budget. So once we get those costs, we'll be working with finance to get the other 2 legs up and running. But right now they're running, they're limping along right now. They got cold air going through the building. So just wanted to update you on that and prepare that there's going to be some costs coming forward in the next couple weeks. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to Councilmember Anderson has a comment.
I just had a question on that, Brian. Do you know estimate on the cost, ballpark?
Just, it could be as high as $70,000. It's the heat exchangers shot in for the 2 legs that are down right now. And then it could be more depending once we get the heat exchanger up and we start getting things turned back on, other problems could arise.
And thank you. A couple years ago, we had a similar issue at the animal shelter with a cooler that wasn't working. Are we pretty good the rest of the city buildings, or?
As far as I know.
Okay.
It's warm in City Hall, Denise. But wait, that's working. We can just make some adjustments on that to get some more offices cooled down. But Justice Center was down. I mean, they had 1 leg running and that didn't cool hardly anything, but we've got cold air circulating now. So hopefully we had to replace a breaker, an expensive breaker. Hopefully that'll hold and keep it going until we can get these other repairs going. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
We'll move to council reports and updates. Let's start with Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Just a couple things. Last week, and this is more personal, but I think West Jordan benefited. I was chairman of a model railroad convention, which is my hobby, and I was able to bring about 38 people representing department heads and the board of that organization to a West Jordan restaurant for dinner, which they thoroughly enjoyed. It was La Luna in Jordan Landing. And we also, during the week, we had, there's several residents in West Jordan that have model railroads, and we sent out a number of buses every day to go look at those model railroads. There's at least 4 that I'm aware of. And so we were able to showcase the city. Our attendees that came to the convention were as far away as Turkey and New Zealand and Australia, a lot from Europe and Canada, and of course the US. So we had 1,200 people in all at this convention, and I think we're able to showcase West Jordan very well. Secondly, we had a very tragic accident on 7800 South, and I at the request of the homeowner, I went and visited with her, and she expressed her concerns to me about that tragic accident and some impacts that she has been feeling from that. And so I went and visited with Dave Quayle, and we chatted with her for about 30 minutes. So just a difficult situation. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jacob.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Well, a couple of things. I want to thank all of the staff and volunteers that helped with the Western Stampede. I've received positive feedback. Also, the Linda Butters Memorial Fun Run was fun. That's my committee, and sadly, my third job. My boss called and said I will work that morning, so I didn't get to be there, but I understand that everything went well. We this year chose to invite our high schools and have them do a little competition, and it was great because West Jordan won on one part of the competition and Copper Hills won on the other. And so it was great to have the extra participants, and I thank all of those community members that came out and supported that event, and especially those awesome volunteers on Healthy West Jordan. And if anyone wants to join our committee and it wants to be a dedicated volunteer, we'd appreciate it.
And on the Linda Butters Run, I got to show them my first place medal for when I ran it, and I said it really helps to be the only one in your age group. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. This year I had the opportunity to serve on the West Jordan Stampede Rodeo Committee along with Councilmember McConaughey, and it was a great experience. I got a good view of what goes on to put on our rodeo. And let me tell you, it is not easy. There are so many volunteers that get together months before we even start to put together this rodeo. And the night of the rodeo, all 3 nights of the rodeo were spectacular. I got to be to most of those nights, and I just want to tell you, even though the rodeo committee is not here, they are a great committee, and they did a great job this year, and I look forward to next year as well. And if those of you are here, including staff, if you haven't been to the rodeo lately, go next year, because we have a top-notch rodeo here in West Jordan, Utah. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to mention the Western Stampede. I thought it was fantastic. I'm glad we did it. And thank you for all those committee members and volunteers. It wouldn't happen without all those volunteers putting in their time. So not only the volunteers that helped with Western Stampede, but also the events volunteers and the Linda Butters volunteers and all the others that all combined together to do it. And I know there were several people who did the watermelon eating contest. I didn't, but there was a pie eating contest, and I did enter that one. And it's the first time I entered a pie eating contest, and it's also the first time I won the pie eating contest. So I just might try to get it next year.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Rather than restating some of the comments that have already been made about thanks to those who have served and helped out with the festivities, I will just echo what's already been stated and leave my comments at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, and regarding the rodeo, there were 2 arena records set at the rodeo this year. One for barrel racing and one for bronc riding, which I thought was really good. We had some world-class, world champion cowboys come, so it was a huge and very successful event, in my opinion. We're now going to move to public hearings, and we'll start with public hearing 5A, which has been asked to be continued to July 31st, 2019, but a motion does need to be required to do that. Councilmember McConaughey.
I was going to say so moved, but do we have, we don't have the resolution for that one, do we? The resolution number?
No.
I'm not quite sure how to reference that without that, so.
Mayor, my understanding was we're still going to hold the public hearing and continue it on that date.
No, this has been changed. We're now moving the whole public hearing to the July 31st.
So was that not notified to the public that we're holding this hearing?
That, I think they were, because it was changed to this.
It was noticed for tonight. Earlier this week, we noticed it we changed the notification for the 31st.
Okay, so may we see if there's anybody here that's willing, wants to speak to this and the next one that may have not realized it got rescheduled?
We're moving the motion entirely per the agenda, and so we're not going to open the public hearing on it this evening.
Okay, I think we should, my personal opinion, and the others may do it, because it says continued, so I think we can do it the way this is, do it today and continue it on that date and do on both.
I'm going to refer to our legal counsel on this one.
You, my advice would be that you follow what the agenda states. So it's problematic to send mixed messages. If you have a motion that's consistent with the agenda, then you're most likely to be legally defensible.
And so your recommendation is?
Is to just have a motion to continue to the 31st of July, just like your agenda indicates, and not have a public hearing this evening.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yeah, for me, it's frustrating to have the public. I would be interested to know how many here are here to speak on the public comment who have made time out of their schedule. If we just changed it, or what date was it changed? Was it Monday? Was it last Friday?
Yeah, it was last Friday.
The agenda came out this way on Friday.
So I don't know, to me, and this isn't new to anybody, I like systems and processes that we adhere to, and I don't know if there's a period of time that we have to notice, because I know, at least, this is all in District 4, which is what I represent, and I know there's a number of residents that are, concerned both in favor and in opposition to this development. And being their representative, it bothers me that we make these changes like 4 days before, which I get the law is, 24-hour notice. But there may be people here that want to speak to it. And now we're saying, you've been here for more than 30 minutes, you drove over here, and we're going to just do it in 2 weeks. So that's my comment.
The other challenge to spreading it out over 2 meetings is that you don't have all of the interested parties in the same meeting hearing all of the comments at the same time. Plus then they're not seeing all the same information. So that's part of the reason for my legal opinion.
Councilmember Whitelock?
So I want to know how we get to that we can listen to anyone that came for this, not why we shouldn't or how we can't. I want to know how we can do it legally, because at the very least, at the beginning of the meeting, maybe we should have reminded them that we weren't, and then they could have had the opportunity during public comment period. But we didn't do that, and
I did mention at the beginning of the meeting that this would be continued.
right, but to be continued, usually when it says to be continued, that means to me that they'd be able to speak, and then we're going to continue next time with this discussion. So I'm up to at least 3 of us that feel like the public should be able to speak. So I hope we get to that somehow legally. We can arrange that. And our meeting is recorded, so anyone that wants to hear it, they can hear it.
Yeah, I simply raised the legal issues. Certainly you could make a motion either way, just if you understand the issues at stake.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm probably the 4th one to echo this. But as was stated by 2 others, when I hear continue, it implies it'll be started and then continued to another time. If I hear it's going to be tabled until a future date, that implies we're going to reschedule. So I was anticipating that the public hearing would be opened. Anybody could be given the opportunity to speak that may wish to have their thoughts heard. At the end of hearing, we would then continue it to the next meeting on the 31st. That's kind of what I anticipated from reading the agenda. It didn't say table, it said continue, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Then my question for our legal counsel is, do we need to have a motion from someone on the council to basically open this up so that we can hear from the folks here?
If that's your intent, that's the motion you need to make. You could certainly interpret that as motion, that word continued. I would say if that's the intent of the council, they ought to make it clear that the basis of their motion is interpreting the word continued to not be tabled, but to hold it and then hold tonight and hold it again later, and then make the motion accordingly.
Okay, with that, then I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing based on a little bit of discrepancy on the agenda. So, Councilmember Whitelock?
Unless Councilmember Anderson had something else, okay. I would like to motion that for item involving
You just say 5A probably would be easiest.
5A, yeah, there we go. 5A, that we open the public hearing, 5A and B, that we open the public hearings, hear from anyone that has come to speak with us, and then that we have these continued to our next agenda on July 31st.
Councilmember Anderson?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock and a second by Councilmember Anderson. And I think I'll take an aye vote on this one. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing on item 5A. And anyone wishing to address City Council on item 5A of the agenda, please come forward. And to remind that you'll have 3 minutes to talk to council. Okay. We will then postpone, we will not close this public hearing on 5A, but we will postpone it until the 31st and reconvene it at that time. So I will now open.
Mayor?
Say again?
I believe that one requires a motion, so I would move that we continue this public hearing to July 31st.
Oh, and I think you're right. That's probably the motion that's going to be required there. So, Councilmember Anderson?
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to that motion? Councilmember Lamb?
Thank you, Mayor. So we just had a lot of discussion about letting people come up and talk about this. Now we're going to continue it to next meeting. Are we going to open it again next meeting since nobody spoke this meeting?
It's already open. It's going to remain open.
I understand that, but now people that wanted to be a part of this might not have been here tonight. Now they can't speak because they weren't here tonight.
They can next time.
They couldn't speak during the public hearing though, could they? Because it won't be open to the public.
Yes, it'll be open to public hearing again next
So
week.
we'll reopen the public hearing and people can do comments next time as well. Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
The other issue, council, is that typically a public hearing is a two-way flow of information, so that we're providing the public information and then they're commenting and providing information back. And obviously tonight, compared to next meeting, there's not a lot of information available to the public that's published in the packet.
Okay. Did we voted on that, correct? Yes, we did, because we're going to move to 5B.
We made the motion the second, there was a question to it, and then I had another comment, but we've not yet voted.
Okay, then let's vote on that one. So we have to have a vote on this one. Chris, you're up here.
I had a quick comment to Mr. Murray's note about the two-way flow of information. While typically, yes, we do provide them some information and they can provide their feedback, even if we don't have anything available, where this is something that's come up before, or even if I can think of a couple residents off the top of my head that might have specific questions, even if we don't have anything to present to the public, we can still be able to hear what concerns they may have, and in that hearing, listen as to what sort of information they might want brought back. So even though we don't have anything, I still feel like it works. So I'll be in favor of the motion.
Seeing no further comments, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes?
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll now open up public hearing 5B. Anyone wishing to address City Council regarding public hearing 5B, please come forward. Seeing none, we will not close this, but we will remain open until the 31st. Come back to council for discussion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, like the public comment period is temporarily suspended. It doesn't remain open for the full 2 weeks, but it's suspended during the time from when we make the motion till the point in which it's continued to. So I move to continue this public hearing till July 31st.
Councilmember Lamb?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Lamb. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
and Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 5C, receive public input and consider for approval ordinance 19-21, which would amend ordinance 00-17, removing all zoning conditions from 0.29 acres of property at 7187 South, 1300 West, and also amending ordinance 04-47, removing all zoning conditions from 0.34 acres of property at 7179 and 7185 South, 1300 West. Scott Langford. Okay, Larry Gardner.
Or Larry Gardner. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a zone change request for the parcels that are highlighted here. Actually, they go, this way. When Milky Hollow condominiums was constructed in the year 2000, these are the zoning conditions that were imposed upon those properties, and it's a HOA shall be created. The project shall not exceed 8 units per acre at a minimum of 15% open space, and the project shall be developed as a condominium project. 4 years later, those zoning conditions were amended, and it stated a minimum of 15% open space will be provided with respect to the property as it now is being proposed, not 15% of the original rezone, which would have been all of it. And the project will now then be developed as individual townhouse units. Neither of those projects ever came to fruition. An extension of Milky Hollow condominiums did not happen. And so the property owner at 7185 is asking for a zone change, and the reason I say it's a zone change, it's not a change to a different district, it's not a change to the square footage of the zone or any of that. What it is simply is changing the zoning by removing the zoning conditions from the property. The property owner's desire is to subdivide and build 2 single-family homes on this property. And so as you can see, deduced from the zoning conditions, it will be impossible for him to do that. So do you have any questions for me?
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want some clarification on your wording you said there. So it's not a zone change?
It's a zone change specific to this property because it's in an R38 zone, ZC, so there is actual conditions imposed upon this property. And the only way legally that we can do that, we change it by removing the zoning conditions. So that is the change to the zone.
Okay, so we're taking the zoning conditions off,
Yes.
which changes the zone, but the zone is staying the same.
Yeah, so
It'll just be without conditions.
The district is the same, yes, it stays in the same district, so.
Thank you.
Sorry for,
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. What is on the property currently?
a very dilapidated home that needs to be torn down. It's
Just-
boarded up and it's.
Just one, though?
Just one,
So we couldn't subdivide it into 2 parcels?
Yes.
With the zoning conditions?
yes.
Got it.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So you mentioned the intention is to build 2 single-family homes there?
Yes, sir.
But the zoning will remain R38?
Yes, and that allows, single-family homes are permitted use in that zone.
But at some point in the future, or if perhaps this one doesn't come to fruition, it could somebody could still build in accordance with the R38 instead of the single-family
But
homes.
that's a problematic because of the cap and grade ordinance. It would not be allowed to build there for some 50 years, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
No, actually, I think Councilmember McConaughey, because that was my question, that we're removing the conditions, but it's staying in R38. Thank you.
Seeing no more questions for staff, I will open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address council on this issue, please come to the microphone, state your name. A reminder that you'll have 3 minutes. Seeing none, I will close public hearing on this issue and come back to council for further discussion and/or a motion. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Normally, this would give me a little bit of heartburn, but actually, I kind of like what's being proposed here. Removing the zoning conditions, I think here is a good thing. It's gonna have to be single-family home if it develops at any time in the near future because of cap and grade. A multifamily here wouldn't be approved for decades to come. So, even though it's staying a multifamily zone, which it already is, the only thing that can be developed in the near future is single family. So this is super cut and dry for me. I was gonna make a motion, but there's other people, so I'll let them speak.
Councilmember Anderson.
That's assuming, I mean, what's being said is assuming that cap and grade remains. So if for some reason cap and grade doesn't remain in the city for a variety of different reasons, whether it's legislative, whether it's future councils, by removing the zoning conditions, it's still R38, and if cap and grade, something happens to it, then cap and grade is the only thing that's protecting it. If we adopt this, is that, you can just nod, Larry, or, I mean, so basically we're getting rid of zoning conditions, leaving the property R38. If something should happen to cap and grade, then the cap and grade protects it as single-family homes now, but if something happens to cap and grade, then that's off the table, and an R38 would be
You mean
permitted.
if the council votes to abolish the ordinance? That's the only thing.
Or legislature could,
Well, yeah, and so.
right?
Yeah, but a single-family home's still permitted in R38, so, you know, quite frankly, the only thing you could build on there is 2 single-family homes or a townhome, duplex townhome.
Right, but
That's
we're getting rid of the zoning conditions for a
Yes.
townhome and relying on cap and grade
Yes.
to make sure it's single-family. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I have.
And Dave Murphy did bring up a point that this subdivision is beneficial for the 1300 West project because now we can get the appropriate setbacks for that area along 1300 West instead of the city having to be on the hook to purchase additional property as this property owner subdivides in the next, month or so, which are his plans, then the appropriate amount of property along 1300 West will be dedicated to the city, so.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple other questions for Mr. Gardner. Sorry. What are the adjoining properties to the north and to the east zoned as?
The north, it's all R38. This whole, from this twin home down to this point is all R38. The whole thing was zoned R38 when Milky Hollow, I should say it goes down to here, when Milky Hollow condominiums went in. I think the intent was to go completely down to here. This was developed as a duplex townhome, probably 10 years ago or something like that. So.
Okay, thank you. I think the issue that I'm struggling with is it feels a little bit messy, having something built that doesn't match up with the zoning. So I'd rather see the zoning lined up with the use. Normally, I'm not a fan of removing conditions that have been placed in place for, going on 20 years now. Because the thought, we saw something similar to this at, similar in the sense of removing zoning conditions at a property off of 13th West and 90th South. And I was opposed to that because other people came and developed in that property. We were removing zoning conditions from one particular parcel so they could develop in a certain way, and I thought that might have an impact on how everybody else came in, being subject to certain conditions. So I was in opposition to removing those conditions. Here in this case, we're seeing some redevelopment being requested to remove the zoning conditions, which, I mean, in this case, it doesn't seem too far out there to be supportive of that. But it's where the use of the property doesn't really line up with the zoning. So I'm wondering, okay, another 50 years down the road when it goes to get redeveloped again, when is it going to be awkward when, well, this is how it's been used, but the zoning doesn't match, and it just feels a little bit messy. I'm not sure what I think on this one, so it's all ears to the rest of the council. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. So Larry, just a quick clarification. So the owner wants to remove these to develop the property. So I hear a lot of people talking about taking it off and 20 years down the road, it'll be something different. But does he want to develop property now, or
Yes,
is he looking to sell it?
No, he wants to develop it now.
Okay.
He's in it for the long
So in this
term.
case, you know, he wants to remove these zones so he can put some houses in, which every homeowner or landowner has a right to look and see what he wants to do with his property. He's not going to do what's already zoned here, so. I'm seeing that the homeowner wants to do this now, not later, so I'm not worried about, at this point, someone coming in and saying, let's build apartment complexes there. So I would say if he's going to do it now, we should look at helping him out so that he can build those houses if it's in a place that makes sense.
And a reminder, single-family homes are a permitted use in the R38 zone. They are a permitted use, so it's not out of character for that zoning district, so.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Larry, do we know if this landowner is he building them for self-use, or is he developing them? Do we know if there's financing in place?
I don't know that, because right now he's just looking to get the property entitled, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, and this will be the last thing I speak on this one. I was thinking that, I was doing the math, right? It's 0.29 acres, and you divide that into two. You basically, an R15 zone would fit for 2 single-family homes, as far as that goes. But the heartburn I get with that is that it's kind of spot zoning, and it's kind of putting it onto a spot zone.
How is it a spot zone?
What's that?
How is it a spot zone?
Well, it would be like, for one particular property, it wouldn't be a zone, it'd be you know what I mean? A zoning is kind of like an area, and this is,
Well, but the zoning conditions.
no,
with
I mean, if we rezoned it to R15,
Oh, yeah.
it would be a spot zone.
I understand now. I
So-
wasn't following.
The other thing I was wondering is if maybe we could put, instead of removing all zoning conditions, we could leave zoning condition number 4 and change individually owned townhouse units to individually owned single-family homes, and have one zoning condition with that being the zoning condition.
That's not the application. It would have to be a motion of the council and be remanded back to the planning commission at that point. So.
Gotcha. All right.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. To Councilmember Jacob's point, yeah, he's dead on. What I was bringing up earlier, if we were to change the zoning to match the use, then you're going to have this little spot where to the north and to the south, it's different than this one little, and that, yeah, 100% is spot zoning. Still not a huge fan. It's what the applicant requested. I think, I don't see anything out of line with what the applicants requested. I'm sure they've struggled with this far more than we have. And with that, I'm going to make a motion, and I move to adopt ordinance 19-21.
Councilmember Lamb.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Lamb. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Anderson.
All right, so I'm having a brain cramp. Did we already have the public hearing? Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
And Mayor Riding.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Move to consent items on item 6. I've been asked to pull consent item 6B and 6H. Councilmember Anderson.
I'll move to approve consent items, all the consent items minus 6B as in Bravo and 6H as in Hulu.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Anderson and a second by Councilmember Whitelock. Discussion of the motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that was H as in hotel. Okay, just to clarify.
That is correct. H is in hotel. B is in Bravo, by the way.
H is in Hulu, but that sounds like Zulu.
Seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 6B, adopt resolution 19-136, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Black Forest Paving for the 4800 West Overlay Project in an amount not to exceed $370,000, excuse me. And Anderson is asked to have this one pulled.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Brian, but I just had a question. I didn't see it in the packet. It's a residential area. Are they gonna be doing like 78 South where they're doing the milling and repaving overnight?
As far as I know, it'll be done during the daytime hours,
And
work hours.
they're not requesting any lane closure, so they will just shift lanes so people can still,
Not aware of that. Dave Murphy, I hate to put you on the spot, Dave.
Good evening. The contractor will have to submit traffic control plans, and those traffic control plans have to maintain traffic. So being that 4800 West is a 3-lane road, it's got a center turn lane, traffic will be moved lane by lane over and slows down, but 1 lane each direction will be maintained during the project.
okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Burton?
I just know that this road is in dire need of this work, and I don't want to do anything to delay it, so I will be in favor of this.
Seeing no further discussion, would somebody like to make a motion? Councilmember Jacob.
Move to approve resolution 19-136.
Councilmember Anderson.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Jacob and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 6H, approve ordinance 19-22, amending the 2009 City of West Jordan Municipal Code, Title IV, Business License Regulations. Councilmember McConaughey has asked to have this pulled, so we'll defer to him on this.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no disagreement with the concept of what's being proposed, rather the method. We've got the bond amounts that are being written into code. My concern is when we write amounts into code, they never get reviewed. I would rather we have something in here that references our fee schedule. Let me back up a little bit. The amounts that are set here, I recognize are set by the state. Councilmember Whitelock in a prior meeting was making a comment that yes, a particular item may be referenced in state, but it's nice for people to be able to look at our code and see exactly what that is without having to jump to multiple places. Which is why I think it would be beneficial if we say in the code, rather than saying $5,000 for Class B license, $1,000 for a single event license, blah, 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 rather say amounts as listed on the city's fee schedule. Then on the fee schedule, have the amounts listed there, and perhaps put an asterisk by it on the fee schedule. And then down at the bottom, the asterisk states, this amount is dictated by the state of Utah. That way, each year when we go through and review our fee schedule, it's a note that, hey, this amount needs to be reviewed to make sure we're still compliant. That way it achieves both objectives. Number one, we're providing anybody who may be perusing our code with the amount right there in front of them, with the fee schedule that has everything else. And there's also a note that indicates that this is from the state and not something just made up by us. So rather than try to write that here, maybe it makes sense to table this one until the 31st. Although, as you've seen in the past, I'm all for trying to write stuff from the dais.
I agree with Councilmember McConaughey that I think it would probably be the wisest thing to table this till the 31st, a date certain, and bring back, and that gives legal an opportunity to add the language in there that would be appropriate. Is anyone objecting to that idea? Do we need to have any kind of a motion to move this?
No, because it's a motion to direct staff. It wasn't a public hearing, so no motion needed to table. It's an item that fails to pass, but doesn't prohibit it from coming back at a future point if we just move on without approval.
Well, I think staff's got the motion, or got the information that they need. I think from this, we can do that.
I think we can take, if we know the council's in agreement with Councilman McConaughey's suggestions, we can take that and bring it back to you next council meeting.
Okay, we will do that. Okay, we'll move to remarks, item 8. Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick remark. You mentioned your first place medal in the run from many years ago, and congratulations on that from many years ago. I'm wondering if Councilmember Burton was the only member in his age group in the pie eating contest, or the only one in the pie eating contest. Just kidding, just kidding.
I was not. It was a wide range and I fit within it.
There were older and younger.
They have a younger one and an older one.
All right. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilmember McConaughey.
On second thought, it's a parliamentarian question. I'll save it for the attorneys later.
Okay. Seeing no one else asking for remarks, we will now move to item 9 on the workshop. And I think I'm going to ask our Assistant City Manager to comment about why this is happening this way.
If I may speak to the workshop for 1 second. I made the suggestion and request that we move the work session to the Shore Gallery this evening rather than hold the work session on the dais. We have three items, 2 in particular that I feel like could use a good, healthy discussion with the council that is a free-flowing, that you get to sit across the table from the developer, the applicant, and the staff and discuss the proposals being heard. We have set up the Shore Gallery. If you would like to meet there, we'll do whatever the council as a whole want us to do. But the Shore Gallery is set up for the work session. It was my suggestion that we meet in the work session, meet in the Shore Gallery for the work session for that reason.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So I love the idea of us not sitting on the dais for our work sessions. I think there's a lot to be had if I can look across the table or have them closer to me and see my fellow council members to speak to, or those coming to present. So while I like that format, I wonder if we couldn't do it in this room. We could just I'm happy to go carry the tables over here, put them up here. I've set up many a church function. I know how to move tables and chairs. We can use these mics. I just feel like in the other room, the audio is not that great. And if I were one of these communities and I was tuning in via our YouTube or our Facebook, I would be expecting to be able to see and hear. And if we're in there, they can't. So my desire would be that I think it is a good idea to sit across from each other, but I'd like it in this room.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you. I would echo what Councilmember Whitelock said, especially with these items that have a fair amount of potential concern from the public about them doing every effort that we can. I prefer we go to every effort to make sure that they're as visible as possible. When we go into the Shore Gallery, we just have the little tiny recorder, and I know from experience, like trying to go back and listen to what was said at strategic planning, that audio recording has so little value. I don't want to give, especially with these items, I don't want to give anybody the opportunity to make an accusation that we did something behind closed doors. Even though the doors are open and the public's welcome to attend and be in there, it's a smaller room, there's no video, and the audio is substantially less. I don't want to give, I want to be as open and transparent and public about this as possible. So if it is possible to move the tables in here and have that in this room, I would make a motion to recess for 15 minutes to make whatever accommodations and then continue with the workshops in here at that point.
Second.
Okay, then. Let me ask a question, as with this, we have a motion by Councilmember Conahey and a second by Councilmember Jacob. And discussion to the motion, I have a question for Brian. Brian, where are there tables close by that we could move in here?
The community room, I believe.
We can easily move the tables
Shore
from the
Gallery.
Shore Gallery into here if that's the desire of the council.
Any further discussion on this motion? Councilmember Lamb.
Before we move to the workshop, do we need to talk about the closed session, or will we come back up here and move to closed session?
Yeah, we'll finish up this motion, and then we'll come back to. Well, okay, all in favor of taking a 15-minute break to set up in here in this room for the workshop, say aye? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, before we do that, though, when we come back from that, then what I'd like to do too, right now, I guess, is take a motion to, following the 15 minutes, move to the workshop, and then from the workshop, move to closed session and adjourn from closed session. So we have this together in one motion. Say again?
We can vote on the
So-
closed session at the end.
At the end of the workshop? Is that what you'd rather do?
I would be open to making a motion now if it is at a time certain. So we know the workshops will go to a certain time and then stop. At this point, I'm not even sure the purpose of the workshop or what's expected of us. So I'm hesitant to just open that up and go indefinitely. If the workshop goes till 11 p.m., I'm not going to stay around be in favor of a closed session. So I'm not going to make a motion now for a closed session at some undetermined time. So my suggestion would be either, if we make the motion now, we have it at a time certain, or we wait until we're done with the workshop items and make the motion from the workshop to go to closed session at that point.
Let's make the motion during the workshop. We can move during the workshop. We can still make motions and things during the workshop. We're still in an open city council published meeting, so.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break, set up some tables, and we will move to the workshop at that time. Okay, we're going to open up the workshop. And the first item is an update on the Ochre Mountain Resort. And Scott Langford, we'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for taking time this evening. I've got a handout
these open?
to help.
Okay.
It should be live, yeah. It's, Mayor and Council, it's been several months since you last saw this development. And in preparation for the July 31st public hearing and possible action and consideration by the City Council, we thought it was prudent to bring this back so that we could review the changes that have taken place since last fall up until now, and give you at least a pre-review of the packet, which will look somewhat like this. There's a lot of, so there's a development plan and a development agreement that will go with this, and there's a lot to digest. And so we wanted to give it in bite-sized pieces, basically. And so to help our discussion tonight, oh, could I get one of those? Thank you.
Scott, without looking, can you tell me how to spell ochre?
I'm not gonna do that.
OCHRE. Is that not the ochre you're talking about?
So, Mayor, to help us march through a lot of these changes, to give the council an update, if you're okay with it, we'd like to use this handout as a framework to help our discussion. Does that seem okay?
Sure.
All right. There have been a lot of staff hours on this, namely Duncan Murray, Jared, and Ray, and they're here to pick up what I may drop. So I'll encourage them to jump in. But basically, on page 1, you see the original concept plan. And Ray, can you get that up on the screen? Is that plugged in?
When you say the original, it was, so we're comparing a newer one with the original one?
Yes. So if you look at page 1, you'll see the concept development plan at the top. And then at the bottom of the page, you'll see the master development plan, which has been more refined. Page 2 is a table that compares the graphics on page 1.
Okay.
So you can see that there have been just minor changes. The original concept had 1,099 units. This master development plan version is 1,097, so it's just dropped by a little bit. Open space changed a little bit, well above the, still well above the minimum required by the PC zone. And then per council comments and directions, the developers have increased the number of larger lots, and you can see that on the table on page 2. And as we march through this, Kent Hogan and his development staff would it be okay, Mayor, to have Mr. Hogan here at the table?
So, quick question before we get too far. I know Councilmember Burton and myself have a hard time seeing what's behind us. Are we okay to move that one and twist it? The public, there's still that one and that one that.
With my phone in selfie mode, I can see it.
Yeah.
This, but it's backwards.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Same order, we're good. That's perfect.
but Chris, you don't want that one moved, right? You want that one to stay for the public.
Yeah.
Just that one over there, because the folks on the other side can still see
Yeah.
this above us.
There you go.
Okay, I'm done whining.
Promise?
So as we Mayor, as we march through these changes, if the council has any questions, again, this is, the purpose of this work session is to have a dialogue.
And I might mention too that the mics on all the council members are open, so they can just jump in if they have a question. They don't need to be called on, so Councilmember Jacobs got his mic on, so I think he's might have
It's
it.
just on so I can talk. You don't have to call on me.
Okay, everybody should have theirs on if they just can jump in.
I want to make sure everything that I say is caught on tape, because I'm a transparent public, never mind.
So any questions on the first 2 pages for the overall plan? We'll get into the finer grain stuff as we move
Scott,
through.
can you remind me the total acreage is of the total project?
220, right? Yes. 220.
220. Okay, so open space is actually on the new development plan version, open space is actually down a little bit. Still, like you said, more than it should be, or more than it needs to be, but nevertheless, less.
Down a couple acres.
Less,
Yeah.
okay.
And I believe, and the developer can comment on this, I think a lot of that was due to increasing the number of larger lots. Is that correct?
So the number of larger lots increased. Did any of the smaller lots or the multifamily decrease?
Multifamily didn't, but the
Yeah,
7 and 6,000 square foot lots went down by 12 and 13 respectively.
You can read yours.
On page,
It's on page
page
2.
2, Councilman.
Thank you.
I didn't expect you to read that first page.
I wasn't.
Total units went down by 2. I'd love seeing an increase in larger lots, but not at the expense of open space. I mean, it's kind of like robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit, so, anyway, carry on.
Okay. Any questions with the first couple pages? Okay, let's go to land use. The original, the original proposed change to the future land use, you can see that at the top of page 3, medium density. Ray, can you move that? Basically, the numbers didn't change significantly, but it's the way we carved out the pockets of the higher density product and what that did to the overall category, land use categories. You can see on the bottom of page 3 that when we included the market rate, high density or the higher density right in the center of the project, that brought the overall density with the rest of the project down into the lower density land use category.
Scott, can you give us a description of high density versus very high density? What's the difference? I mean, when people hear high density, they don't like that. Now this one says very high density. What are we looking at?
Really don't like that.
So that's a good question, Councilman Lamb. That's defined in our general plan, page 23, but I don't have the numbers memorized. Let me pull that up.
I'm just wondering what the difference would be. I mean, is it a difference of 1,000 people, a difference of 500 people?
Page 24, sorry. Okay, I thought I had that memorized. But I think that's important, Councilman, to put into the record.
Units rather than people.
Yeah, units. That's what I should have said.
Okay, so page 24 of our comprehensive general plan indicates that very low density is up to 2 units per acre. Low density categories 1 to 3 units per acre. Medium density 3.1 to 5 units per acre. High density 5.1 to 10. And anything 10.1 units and higher is classified as very high density. Oh, you have that? Yes,
Thank you,
that's right. We do have that cheat sheet for you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Scott, a question I have is, why these changes? Why are we making these changes?
Well, to be quite honest, it's more consistent with what we do with the rest of the city. We're trying to go through, and if you look at our citywide master plan, we're trying to clean that up to actually match the general plan to what is actually built. So it's if you look at this,
Shouldn't it be the other way around? Don't we want to build according to the master plan?
Well, on the east side of the city. So this, I consider this top approach is more of a hatchet type approach where you just are painting with a broad brush. This is just a more refined representation of what they will actually build and what they're actually proposing.
And I like seeing it go from medium density to low density, so I wouldn't question that at all.
So, well, I'm just wondering why they're making the change, because it has it this way, why, which is unusual, I know. That's why I was
Well,
curious.
part of it, I think, came from the recommendation of the council.
They came before us,
They did.
and so they came back with this, and
So the answer is because the council gave them direction to?
I think they listened to the council, what the council was saying.
Oh, that's great.
Ray,
I want to jump
Ray's
in,
got
I want to jump
comment
in,
as well.
but
I have
Ray
a
go
comment from the
first.
peanut gallery over here. If you'll look on this, on the upper plan here, you'll notice that these units, these are multifamily units, were not included they were included as part of this area where all the single-family homes are. And now what's happened is that that's now been included in the very high-density category, which it should be. And so what that did is it dropped the overall density down for the area that's single-family, it put that into the low-density category. So it's not necessarily that the number of units have changed a lot, but it's just that that is now added, those multifamily units are now added as part of that very high-density category, which it should be.
So it's more accurate.
More accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing that jumps out to me on this one is that very high density smack in the middle. I don't know the topography, so I don't know if there's a reason for it there, but having the very high density in the middle, everybody's got to travel through the low density to get to the high. I wonder what that's going to do to the low density that's around that. And is that something that could be adjusted, like kind of down to the closer to right up behind the commercial?
Can I answer that?
Please.
The intent is to try and put the highest density product near the amenities, because they don't have a yard. So the intent is to try to offset their loss of personal open space, private open space, with, they're living right on a park, so.
Yeah, I
that
figured
was
as
the
much, but
intent.
it looks like it could still be done if they were over by the commercial area. I just worry about all the folks.
Go to the front page, you can see where the layout is and why it's by the amenities.
Yeah, I'm looking at the front page.
Good job, you followed instructions.
So right there, amenities right there.
Yeah, but you could get the same thing if you moved it right over here up behind the commercial.
The amenities could still-
Because right now you're gonna have all the folks coming, folks are.
The
Isn't
traffic
a lot
study
of
does-
that
the
you're-
traffic off of, the traffic's off of.
Is that
the
you're
highway, so
over
it is-
55 and you're assisted living, you're in that area, right?
Right.
So
It's
it's
gonna
not a
generate lot of traffic.
typical high density.
Yeah, I just see people like coming in, cutting through, maybe going around the lower density to the west to get in there. It just, the newer version doesn't look like it's buffered when you look at it. That's why that one jumped out. Because you've got the donut hole of very high surrounded by the low density, that's where I was thinking,
So I don't
okay,
see, Councilman, I don't see a real, a difference in that at all, as far as the layout goes.
Yeah, that's where I was saying if this could be placed like over here, so it's closer to the commercial, so that it's kind of buffering that rather than the donut hole in the middle of low density.
See. But that wasn't a change between the concept and.
No,
and
no,
this.
it's not. I'm bringing that up.
Just a
as-
general.
I wasn't here for the prior conversation, so
Oh, okay,
that's why I'm bringing that one up.
sure.
But I see his point, because you look at the yellow, and it looks like it's surrounded by low density, but then when you look at it, there's no housing between where they'll drive in and get to that high density. The housing is off to the side. Right, they'll drive on that road here. They're not actually driving through the subdivision, I guess, but that shouldn't be hard to just to flip that over here. Just swap that for that.
Just an observation.
So Mayor, the land use really didn't change. I mean, the unit count went down by what, 3 or something like that? Two. And so the difference in the future land use map is essentially, it just reflects what our current policy is when we do land use map amendments, that's all. Okay. So the next, on page 4, we're gonna start digging into the amenities. And in all honesty, this, in my opinion, is what sets this proposal apart from other developments. It's a very highly amenitized development, as you may remember. And the list on page 4, I appreciate Ray going through, and he has highlighted the differences between the concept that you saw last fall versus the one that you'll be considering at your next meeting. Whether it's an increased amenity, no change, or a reduction. And so this is a great opportunity to comment on these.
Yeah, I have a question on amenity number 19 specifically. So are we talking? I was just wondering if we're talking portable hot tubs or in-ground? What exactly are we referring to
Jacuzzi
here?
is a brand name. Has that been?
Yes, that's a trademark term, by the way.
What kind do you sell?
Jacuzzi.
I know, but
Oh,
indoor.
no, I actually sell the actual jacuzzi branded hot tub, portable
Okay.
hot tub.
That's the kind we're gonna use.
Absolutely.
In ground.
No corruption here at all. I'll refer you to another salesman, just so that I stay out of that.
Just a question, what's Terra Park, number 39?
Can you explain that?
What is a Terra Park?
So a Terra Park is something we've seen in lots of other communities. It's essentially a more naturalized play structure. You use boulders and logs and rope swings. It's basically, it's just a different play structure, more naturalized.
Okay, but it's for youth oriented still?
Yeah, it's for kids.
It'd be more for the teenagers, yes.
Teenagers.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
if
for-
they choose, if the seniors choose to get on a rope
Yeah.
swing, that'd be fine.
If they're real active, yes.
They're really successful. They're really popular. Terra Park. Terra, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So at this point, we can certainly discuss any of these amenities, but I would like to take a moment and kind of talk about the crowning jewel of these amenities, which is the clubhouse. And that's been a lengthy discussion between Mr. Hogan and staff, and when that will be built, as well as the other amenities. And I can give him and his consultants an opportunity to explain how that they envision that working. But before he does that, let me tell you the city code, how the city code works in terms of installation of non-public improvements in developments like this, where they're getting increased density and so forth for amenities. Title 3, I think 3-8, talks about the installation and timing of non-public improvements, and that's typical. Now, if that doesn't meet the desire or comfort level of the city council, we have the development agreement, and we can address it through the development agreement. But for example, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but if you look at page 6, you can see a phasing plan. And the development agreement right now is being crafted, and you'll see it in short order, where the installation of amenities march progressively through and are developed with each phase, as seen on the page of page 6 right there. So what the code, our city code, says is that the installation of amenities have to take place, and bonds are taken in with each phase. For example, if you had an amenity that was shown in phase 1B, which the clubhouse is, as well as several of the other nice amenities, they would not have to post a completion or assurance bond until they wanted to record that phase. Does that make sense? So they could go ahead and build phase 1A, And there are some amenities shown in 1A, and we can get into those details if you'd like. But they wouldn't be required, as shown currently, they wouldn't be required to build that clubhouse until they got to phase 1B. And they wouldn't need to start construction until the end of phase 1B. Now, could they start? Yes, they could start before that. But per our code right now, they wouldn't have to post an assurance bond until they record phase 1B. Now, state law allows them to do a construct first and record later type of format. So they could theoretically build all the units in 1A and 1B and not have to post an assurance until they decided to record 1B. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm also thinking it's to their advantage to put the amenities earlier to help sell the other units. So I don't see them wanting to delay those necessarily. So we're permitting them to do it earlier. My question comes on the other phases. Do they have to finish phase 3 before they do phase 4? Or will you permit them to do phase 4 if they start selling that area, even though phase 2 may not be completed yet?
Are the phases going to be enforced?
Right.
The phases, as the development agreement is drafted right now, it's a sequential marching through 1 through 5.
So no permits for phase 3 until phase 2 is.
So what's the advantage to
Yes.
West Jordan for
That's correct.
for enforcing them to finish phase 2 or phase 3 before they start phase 4? What is our advantage on that?
I'm sorry, could you restate that?
What is the advantage to the city to require them to complete phase 2 before going to phase 3, or to complete phase 3 before starting phase 4?
A lot of that has to do with the installation of infrastructure. This is a very green site, and we've got water and sewer lines that need to be installed, road connections, so that there's a method to the madness.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, Scott. Okay, but my understanding is by the sequential ordering of the phase, and he can't start phase 1B until, or can't record phase 1B and then start phase 2 until the amenities are in. The advantage to the city is that it assures, or at least provides further assurance that the amenities get done before the additional phases.
That's correct. That's correct.
And if I was a commercial entity that wanted to build something on that commercial site, I would want more rooftops there to be able to sustain my business.
So, given the number of units, and you can see sort of the breakdown of units per phase on page 6. So phase 1 has 155 single family, 240 multifamily. So that includes phases 1B and 1A. So you've got that number. We've asked the question as staff to Mr. Hogan, how this highly amenitized development was going to financially pencil out. And so I would invite him to kind of talk to that and talk about how opening this up to residents outside of this development may work.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say how much we appreciate staff working with us, especially this last 6 or 7 months. We've met every other week and some weeks every week. And we've been, and prior to that, we were meeting for about 7, 8 months prior to that. So a lot of work has gone into this, and we've tried to take the input from not only the council, but all from the public and the residents and tweak this. And we've tweaked it several times, which, always delays projects anytime you keep tweaking it. But we do appreciate the effort that's gone into this, because a lot of man hours has gone into this in addition to a lot of money. And so the clubhouse and the amenities will be open to residents outside of the project. And those will be sold by memberships. The residents within the project, they get as part of the HOA fee. They are part of the, will belong part of the amenities and be able to use the amenities at a much reduced price. And that is estimated somewhere around 30% versus the outside residents. And as we move forward, it's always a cost and a function of cost and revenue. And so to try and keep the revenue coming in as you move forward, and like you're saying, Mayor, commercial people like we're right now courting Harmon's and Chick-fil-A and even the LDS Church coming in with a seminary and a stake center. They want to see rooftops, and so we want the amenities there as fast as possible too, because that helps attract rooftops. So what we've done in the developers agreement, we've tried to put so many amenities in phase 1, so many amenities in phase 1B, and that those move forward in conjunction with those phases. And then by the time we start phase 2, the clubhouse is under construction, and it's moving forward. And so this is, we've tried to come up with something that works for everybody, the city, the developer, and the buyers of the homes.
So one of the concerns that we brought up, it's in our recent past here in West Jordan, we were talking about a potential rec center on the west side of the city, and there's substantial ongoing costs to rec centers. Now this is a clubhouse, but it's kind of akin to a rec center of sorts, and so our experience, and albeit it's not personally, I don't have a whole lot of experience with rec centers, but anecdotally from what I've heard, it costs quite a bit of money to keep that going. So how would you answer that?
So these amenities, when they're completely built out, will run somewhere between $12 and $13 million. Now, when we look at that on top of the $8.5 million water tank that we've proposed that we would build for the city and hopefully get reimbursed down the road. and then also the cost of improving 90th South, another approximately $4 million. This is probably the heaviest front-loaded project I've done per unit of any project that I've ever done. But it's a project that we're really proud of. We feel like that these amenities is something that could be a model, okay, for large projects in the future. And the financiers that I have involved, they're on board with that concept.
Would you feel comfortable talking about your potential partnership with the other gentleman who's been running?
So the person I brought in that'll be working with me on the sports mall is, if any of you have been over to 56 South and 9th East, there's a sports mall over there. It's the oldest running continuous sports complex in the state. It was what, 43 years? About 43 years. And so if you've been around the valley at different times, and you've been, and as we were younger and we all thought it was great to get up at 6 o'clock and go exercise and so forth, you've seen some sports facilities that have come and gone. But this particular sports mall, and the owner of the sports mall has been around for 43 years, and he understands what it takes to make a sports mall work, and that's the reason I've teamed up with this particular individual. And if you wanted to walk through his particular facility, you'd be more than welcome to, if you wanted to go as an individual or as a group, you could be more than welcome to go over, and I could arrange a tour of his sports facility there on 9th East and 56 South.
So Mayor, Council, do you have any questions or comments about the amenities? Okay. Yeah, you traveled right, you got here right at the right time, Rob.
Mayor, if I may, just a couple of comments. I'm here because I made some representations to you last fall when these folks were here and again in February when we talked again. And I just want to make sure that you understand very clearly what you're getting. And I feel like it's my obligation to tell you that as your legal counsel. And I'm going to speak a little bit more frankly than you probably hear the staff speak. And I guess maybe that's because I have gray hair and I'm old. When we met in the fall, late fall, many of you were very impressed, as I was, with this development and what was proposing, and it is pretty impressive. I want you to understand that I think that this kind of development is what the city needs to have in some locations for a number of reasons. One is that the legislature, as you know, to some extent, is imposing on cities an obligation to densify. And this is the kind of development that if it can happen the way it's being laid out is the kind of density that is great because it's very high quality and it's in a good location. It's a good mix and, you know, all of those things. And so that part of it is very impressive. And I represented to you in the fall and again in the early winter that I was confident that we could put together documents that could give the city the best opportunity to have this happen the way it was presented to you. And I still believe that we can do that. I don't know, I'm not the smartest attorney in the world, but I've got a pretty good resume having done a lot of these developments over the last 36 years, and I've learned a few things. And one of the things that I'm concerned about at this point with this development, and I just need to, I told Corbin and David I needed to say this to you because I don't want you to be misled by me that you end up with something in 3 or 4 years that you said, well, Rob, you said this could happen. Well, it can, but there's a couple of things that, in my opinion, are missing to give you the level of assurance depending upon how badly you want this development. If you think about the Zone 5 water tank in that whole complex, that's a necessary improvement that has got to go in for this and other developments. In fact, one you're going to hear about here later is going to use part of that as their water source. And when the city decided that had to be part of the system, there was a study done to show how much water was needed for what was master planned, how that water could be delivered, and what was lacking to be able to have that happen. And then there was also a study done by Raftelis to show you what the water rates needed to be to sustain that water system. And now Mr. Hogan and his group are going to build that system, which is all great. That is not an uncommon approach. And in fact, it's the fiduciarily responsible approach that elected officials should take when they're having infrastructure built for a city. More important there than an amenity package, because there you can force people to pay whatever has to be paid to run it, right? You turn off their water if they don't pay it. My concern with this development right now is that the amenity package was represented to you as going to be open to the public. And here's my question to you. To the extent that you feel like that amenity package is as important in giving this density and building in this location as having the water available and the streets and the sidewalks and so forth, to the extent that that is risen to that same level and you feel like that is what this reason you're willing to give this density, then my advice to you is that you need to see the same sort of analysis done that can show that this amenity package, which is wonderful, won't only be built, but it's sustainable after it has been built. I'm not an expert in this, but I can tell you with quite a bit of confidence that I think Mr. Hogan's a pretty good developer. I've seen some of his work in other cities. There's some right across the freeway you can look at, and there's no question in my mind that this can't turn into a great development in terms of the quality of the housing. But whether it's Mr. Hogan or any other developer, they cannot predict for you what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years with the economy. And under this current scenario, these documents that you're going to be asked to vote on, they're not quite done yet, will allow for up to 400 units being built before there's any assurance at all given to the city that this clubhouse is going to be built. And at the 441st entitlement, that's when a bond has to be posted. 400 lots is a lot of lots. I'm going to throw some numbers out. I'm not a developer, and Mr. Hogan and his staff can contest them, and the staff can too. But that's my point. We just don't know. We haven't seen the analysis. But you think about 400 lots. Most developers I've talked to over the years, when they go into a project, they'll look at getting somewhere between 25 and 30% return on the cost per lot. And if you multiply that times 400, that's a lot of money. Depending on what and because of that, I think this applicant has the ability to build the water system. I think that's probably why their financing agency is willing to do that. There is the money there. But if you think about what could happen in the economy, and if it were to tank, or if the takedown of these high-end apartments or condominium units didn't go as projected, you may never get to 400 units. Or you may get to 400 units and the applicant decides that's enough, I can't take any more risk. There's nothing in the current documents that guarantee you're going to get that clubhouse. And so my message to you is, to the extent that you're relying on that as a key to granting these entitlements, you need to think very carefully about what level of assurance you want that that clubhouse will be built and can be maintained over time. Anecdotally, if you think about what typically would give a city the kind of assurance that would start to get you to a point where you could feel comfortable, would be if you had a business pro forma that included as part of that pro forma a market study that took into account the socioeconomic demographics of West Jordan generally, and that area specifically, where people who live around this development would or would not be likely to join, and how much it would cost. And I think if you think about even 1,100 lots, the approximate total of these lots, how much money, if you had 0 South Jordan residents join, what is the level of HOA fees each month that is going to have to be charged to sustain this type of amenity? I can tell you this type of amenity, I've looked at it very closely. I happen to have done the legal work for the West Valley Fitness Center and the ice rink. I did the legal work for the South Jordan Fitness Center. I consulted with South Davis County on the South Davis Recreation Center. And I can tell you that this facility is about 1/3 of the size of South Jordan. And I can tell you that they have a whole lot more than 1,100 memberships supporting that facility, and it's heavily subsidized. I don't know what the pro forma is on this facility. If you were not anticipating it being open to the public and you didn't care and it was just for this development, I wouldn't have come down from my vacation to talk to you. But if you have in your mind the anticipation that this is going to be a club that you can join, which frankly I think is a tremendous idea. I would love to live in a place like this. My wife wouldn't, but I would personally. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see a lot more of these around the valley. There have been 2 or 3 built along the Wasatch Front. I think they're tremendous. My concern is we just haven't seen the numbers. And again, I hope that the developer understands I'm not disrespecting him or his work, but it's a bit of a gamble we're taking. And I felt like I needed to tell you that because I have been very enthusiastic about this development, and I am about this concept. I think it's tremendous. But the safeguards aren't there like they are for the water system and the streets and the street lights and the sewer and all of those things, which again may not matter to you. So please understand that. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say to you. And I would add to that the applicant has been very willing to work with the staff, and there have been a lot of meetings. And that's great. But at the end of the day, you need to look at what is the deal that we have. I can tell you that it's not unusual for these type of projects where there are so many issues at play here. You have 8600 South that's not even owned by the developer or the Joneses, the underlying property owner, in part. You have the issue of there being no water infrastructure. when these kind of developments have those kind of issues, they take time, and 1 year is not a long period of time. And I could give you a list of 30 projects or more, I was thinking about this on the way down, that I've personally been involved in, where it takes months and months and months and meetings and meetings and meetings with the elected officials to work through these issues. So I appreciate the developer. From my perspective, they've really been forthcoming, and I love this concept. I think this is the kind of housing we need. But again, because of the things that I said to you in the beginning and my zeal for this, I felt like I needed to now follow up with you and tell you, there's an element of this that makes me a little uncomfortable. But it's only uncomfortable if all of you are relying on that as if it were a public recreation center. If that's not the issue, don't worry about it.
The only- You said that, if it was, no, yeah, that's not true. So what kind of safeguards could be put and would you recommend for this?
Well,
And
Councilman,
is that appropriate for a safeguard for a clubhouse, which is totally different than a street or a water tank?
it's totally different. And as I said, if it hadn't been represented as something and seeing how you responded to that, oh, this will be open to the public and we can join. It is different. It's that response that I saw that in my mind kind of raised this to another level. As far as the safeguards, you know, without an analysis of what it would cost to operate one of these, I can't really tell you specifically, but generally I can say for a normal size recreation amenity, 400 units before it started and bonded for is unusual. I was thinking tonight, there's a development, there are two of them in South Jordan, thinking of recent ones that have 400 and 500 units. One's called San Marino, one's called San Tropez. They're actually rentals, although some of them are purchased and then rented. They're some are owner occupied, some are not. They don't have clubhouses of this magnitude, but I can tell you that there was some very serious financial analysis done and made available to the city before those were approved, because they're very high density. They're very, very nice. They're similar to what I envision this developer has in mind here. Although a lot of this is owner-occupied condominium, but the quality is similar. Those amenities, even though none of those are public, like these are proposed to be, those were begun after the second building was built. About a fourth to a fifth of the way into the development. They were very early on. 150 units is more common to what I've seen. But again, you know, a lot of that depends on how you perceive the risk. If you understood the reality of making these amenities work the way they're being presented. And again, not saying I don't believe these folks. That's not it. It's hard numbers. It's the economy. It's what happens that none of us can control that you need to look at. Another thing that could be relevant is, you know, if it turns out that a pro forma showed that the demographics here, we're likely to see 400 more memberships or 500 more memberships come in at the cost of $350 a month. And you saw, and it would also show how many of these folks, you know, what the HOA fees would likely be to support that clubhouse with another 400 memberships. That could give you a good feel for your comfort level. So those are some of the concepts. I know there are some others of these. There's a couple of others of these in the state where it's a joint partnership, and there've been studies done. And there's also, you know, years of actual operating costs that may be available. I don't know.
Let me ask a
That's
question.
the best I can answer that, council member.
Ask a question of the developer is, based on the comments that you just heard, your comments about assurances to the city about the items that were brought up by your attorney.
First of all, let me state that I've been developing for 54 years, and every project I've done is risk. And so the developing business is risky. But on the other hand, I've never had a project that I've had to walk away from. And I think also, I think the way I'm approaching this is a little bit different than maybe what Robert has mentioned on some of these other projects. A typical developer would go into a project like this, and he would finance his clubhouse, and so he would have debt service. What I'm proposing is we take all of our profits from the first 400 sales, And that goes so that, to build a clubhouse, so that we don't have debt service on our clubhouse. That way, we don't have to sell outside memberships. We're offering outside memberships because we thought it was good for the community. But I'm taking most of my profits, and all of my profits in the first 400 lots, and even a lot after the first 400 lots. As Mr. Wall knows, most of your profits come in the last 20% of the project, okay? And so a developer, what he does is he pays down his development loan with all 100% of his profits as the project goes forward. And then the developer finally sees some profit towards the end and has his bonds start getting released. But what I'm proposing is, with this project, we're taking 100% of the profits from the first 400 lots to build the clubhouse and some of the other amenities, and then continue to build out other amenities as phase 2 is completed, and continue to take profits from that. And this is the way I've approached it with my lenders. So we want a sports mall that is debt-free. So I might not make as much on the project like a lot of developers, but what I'm hoping is by putting my profits back into the sports mall, I have oncoming income from the sports mall as we sell memberships down the road.
Couple thoughts. I know the council's heard me say this a dozen times, and I'm gonna kind of, it might seem like I'm deferring from what I've said in the past, but I like seeing the amenities that are available to the neighborhood to help offset the impact to the neighborhood. Usually when we see a development, they'll say, okay, well, we're gonna help out the community because we're going to bring in swimming pools and things like that are just available for the residents. Well, in my mind, those amenities that are used to, the trade-off for the amenities is additional density. And I wanna make sure that those amenities kind of make the community whole for any impacts felt by that additional density. Usually that comes into play, so you're looking at the screen behind us, as you're looking at the map, usually you'll get somebody who doesn't develop the full block. I mean, here you're 90th to 86, U111 all the way over to I-64. Usually you'll have somebody just kind of take a little chunk of that, and my concern is, okay, well, what about the people living right on the border? How are they gonna be able to benefit? They've got all this density that just moved into them next door. How are they gonna benefit from that? In this case, you're doing the whole block. You're bordered by major arterials, 86, 90th, U111, 64. I don't have that same concern, given the size of the project, that I do with the smaller, like 20 to 40 acre projects that have something immediately next to it. So I very much appreciate Mr. Wall's comments, but in this case, if it were something that were to be opened up, that'd be fantastic. But in my mind, that's not a showstopper. Though that sparked about a dozen other comments or a dozen other thoughts. And on a quick side note, man, I'm really glad that you're here with us. That was, yeah, I'm very, very happy to get your perspective for legal matters like this. There's just so much depth with your background, and the resume that you talked about, you just barely brushed on that. We spent some time going through that before you came to the city, and man, that's impressive. I feel like it pays off for us a lot. But to your comment, yeah, given the size and the scope, I don't have huge concerns. If it's open to the community, great. If it's just intended internal, okay, so be it. But I do like your idea of giving people the option. The thing that I worry about, though, is can we go back to slide or page number 5 on that? Is it possible to get that a little bit bigger? There's a lot of wasted real estate on the sides of the screen. The zoom's in the bottom right corner. I did not mean for that. I did not mean to give Councilmember Burton an opening for that pun. I apologize to everybody here. All right, scroll. Okay, that works. So we've got the public versus the private. We've got basically that trail that comes through up top. Is it intended that since that's public, the city will eventually at one point begin maintaining that, or will the development continue maintaining that?
The HOA is maintaining all the private trails, all the trails.
That was worrying me a little bit.
We'll have a public easement across the trail so that we'd have access. That's an important link to our Trails Master Plan. So we will have public access to the trail, but no maintenance obligations.
Yeah. Good. If it was going to turn over to us, I was going to pitch a fit, especially about the roundabouts. But
Those roundabouts are shown because they're in the public right-of-way.
Yeah. If we were gonna have to maintain them though and handle landscaping and that, then I would, yeah, no. I'll leave it at that.
Can I ask one other question, just again, to make sure in your minds, we are all on the same page? I focused a lot on the clubhouse, and there's a lot of other amenities here that are really cool, that are not the clubhouse. And I guess my question is, and maybe Jared or Duncan or Kent or Scott, you could answer this. To what extent are the amenities that are not within the confines of a building intended to be open to public use?
Well, right now, we envision that unless it's fenced off in some way, like, the swimming pool area or something like that, I don't see how we could stop, anybody from outside the area if they wanted to come over and walk on the trails or something like that, how we can preclude that. And so I would say that a lot of those that are away from the clubhouse, are going to be accessible to the outside residents if they wanted to walk across the street and without a membership and rub shoulders with their neighbors.
That's really generous, and could I suggest something then, if that's where this is going to go? The applicant certainly has the right to close those off, and there's a lot of reasons to do that, and it's great that they're gonna leave them open to the public. I'd suggest if that is what is going to happen, that to avoid conflict with the HOA in the future in the city, that in the development agreement, we include cross easements for any of those facilities that are open, so that we don't put our police department in a situation where they're constantly getting calls from residents of a OMR complaining about non-residents trespassing on the property. That's always an issue that comes up with these private amenities, and in this particular case where they're so expansive, and there are public streets running in and out of here, the likelihood of the public going over there and playing tennis or swinging on the swings is pretty high. And if the applicant's willing to do that, I think in the long run, that's gonna save a lot of conflict between the city and the HOA.
Amen.
And I don't mean to
And I
force that on
totally-
you, Ken.
and I totally
'cause
agree, Robert.
I
I
would
really do.
defend your right to close those off to my death, but if we're gonna do that, I would recommend that.
And there will probably be, certain areas that will be closed off, like, swimming pool and so forth, but there's gonna be certain areas that are definitely gonna be left open.
Well, and if I can add, as I represent District 4, which is this area, and in talking to residents in that area as I visit with them over the past months and weeks, I would say that probably 2/3 to 3/4 of them are wanting some sort of a recreation amenity. Now, whether they would go to this one or not, that it's going to depend on pricing and all of those kind of things. But I do think that you would find more than just those in this development that would be using that.
We've had quite a few neighbors from both to the east and to the north that have contacted us and told us that they look forward to being able to use these amenities as long as, the fees, as you mentioned, are reasonable. And because we won't have a lot of debt service, I think we'll be as reasonable as anybody out there.
Okay.
Sorry, Alan.
I was just gonna, I'm sorry. I was just gonna ask, so we talked a little bit about the commercial space, and Scott, the phasing of the commercial space on this master development plan has it as phase 3, and that is after 1B, which includes this amenity space, so that would be the 400 units. Is that enough where some of the organizations that Mr. Hogan mentioned is that enough rooftops to say, yes, we need to build there, or do we run into a delay?
Commercial's always, that's a wild card.
I just don't want it to end up being residential. 20 years from now, we can't get any commercial in, so
Right now, there's no units proposed in it, okay? And we do have serious dialogue going along with Harmon's and then we've also got serious dialogue going along with Chick-fil-A and Chase Bank.
Okay.
Can I add something to that?
We will contact them.
Cafe Rio, Chick-fil-A,
Mr. Hogan, Mr. Albin's correct. Nobody can predict that. And hopefully our land use planning has been good, so that as we've identified where commercial ought to go, that as the market proceeds, it will support that. But again, and this isn't necessarily OMR, this is just generally, whenever you see these mixed-use developments, it is as common as not that the developer will be here 2 or 3 years later, or perhaps not even this developer, another one who's acquired the property, and say, council, you know what, we can build that commercial, but it's gonna sit empty. Would you rather have commercial or property tax-paying residents? So there's always that risk. And there's really no way to minimize that, other than hopefully our land use planning's been good.
I think the main reason that Harmon's has been very positive, the closest Harmon's to this property is 4.9 miles away, and that's a long distance. And so I really think that we're far enough away from other facilities, commercial facilities, and we haven't overdone the commercial area. I think we've really hit a happy balance when it comes to the number of acres versus the size of the project for commercial.
Have you done any studies about your sports facility? Have you done market analysis?
My partner has done, I don't know to what extent, but before he agreed to come and joint venture this with me, he took about 6 months and then got back with me after he did his own particular study.
Okay, so something has been done. Yes. The city may have not seen it, but you've.
That's correct.
And so that's given you a comfort level.
That's given me a comfort level, yes. Okay. He is also putting his money where his mouth is, but he did take time to check it out and do his own. I didn't want to influence him in any way, so I just gave him 6 months, and he got back with me and says, I think this would be a great area.
Does his sports complex have a name that I could Google?
It's called the Sports Mall.
It is just called the Sports Mall. Okay, thank you.
So, a couple other thoughts. First,
There's tennis there, by the way. Tennis.
Oh, yes.
Your mic's off.
Yes.
Could we get this packet up online with the agenda, so folks who come after the fact, it would have been nice to see this one in advance, but at least for the folks after the fact, if we could add that, that'd be helpful.
Sure.
There was another development that happened probably, I want to say like 18 years ago, and they promised all sorts of really cool amenities, including Frisbee golf. I realize here it's called disc golf, probably. I would like to see, well, what we saw with the other one, when I first came on the council, we still had people that were coming to us getting frustrated saying, when I bought this property, I was told I'd be next door to a Frisbee golf course, and that didn't happen. And then the developer was telling folks, well, the city said we couldn't do that, and we had to turn it into additional homes. I want to make sure that if there's a laundry list of amenities that are going to be available that are part of the sales process for the development, something's documented, just to save future councils and future city the headache of having to say, if for some reason something doesn't come to fruition, they don't come pointing the finger at the city, making complaints to the city, coming after us and anything like that. I don't anticipate any problems, but coming in 15 years behind another development where they walked away from that portion of the project was not fun.
Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, as good as this master development plan is, I know which development you're talking about, and I've filled in a lot of those questions and complaints. And so we've asked for some good descriptions of the graphics, and we will have that list in that packet on July 31st.
I'm not sure if it could be enforced or required by ordinance, but if there's something that could be given to the folks who are potentially going to own property there, saying, here's what the developer's planning to do. If for some reason the developer changes their mind, it's on the developer, then great. I just don't want the city getting complaints should something not quite pan out. And
Yeah, it will be, if the council chooses to adopt this development plan, including the agreement and so forth, it'll be by ordinance.
Cool. Then
Could I just add something to that, council member?
Can I interrupt for a second? Mayor, I've just been noticing Brian over there with his goldfish and Denise. Do we still need them to stay here for this, or should we excuse them? Because I don't know.
That's Corbin's call.
Councilman Burton, I've excused the staff who don't need to remain. So those who are here will have items in the future on the agenda or just are here in case their portion comes up with this discussion.
Dirk just wants some goldfish.
What I was going to say, there's actually case law in Utah that once a city accepts an improvement bond, then the city, the residents who may buy in anticipation of those improvements being put in, whether they're public improvements or not, they have a cause of action against the city if they're not put in, and that's why it's so important for our staff to value those bonds correctly. So from a legal perspective, that's the protection you'd have. Historically, West Jordan's not alone. I don't know that there's a way you can ever prevent the public from pointing their fingers at all of you. The best thing you do is you make sure that in your agreements you have the assurances that will give you the comfort level to approve the project, and then you let the arrows fly.
Yeah,
if it happens.
On this one, it was just something that they were told by the folks who were selling the properties. The developer had backed away, and they were just going on verbally what they'd been told. So having something written would save a lot of headaches. Going back to the map, Mr. Tingy pointed out that when I was talking about them developing the entire section, they're not doing the whole thing. If part of it could be sold off. So he was asking if my concern, or if the ease of my concern, if my concern was still lessened knowing that. And just to clarify where I was saying I was worried about, just to clarify what I was worried about, when we have these high-density developments that come in next to something that's already existing, next to low-density residential, there's an impact immediately on those neighbors. Those are the neighbors that I'm worried about. So that top part, that's still part of the development plan, but it may not be developed right away. There's nobody there right now nobody there right now to be impacted. So you're not going to get people saying, hey, you allowed this to happen. This is devaluing my property. I don't see any benefit. We don't have that. So my concerns are still eased, but I thought that would be beneficial to share with the group. The other thing that kind of plays along with, can we go to page 8 and the diagram on page 8? We've got the masonry wall, which is the dotted line on the bottom, on the south side and on the west side, and then all of 8600 is the yellow dotted line, which is a 6-foot vinyl fence. I do not like that idea against 8600 South. People walking on that sidewalk, it's a wider street, nobody, I mean, if it were residential, like not 2 lanes, but just like a neighborhood street, I might be okay with that, but I really don't like the idea of that huge length. It's just being a vinyl fence.
I appreciate you looking at that. The reason why, and the developer can talk about it, the reason why and it's not just a straight vinyl fence. It has the brick columns. They were basically matching what's on the north side of 86. That's why they proposed that.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. But per ordinance, our ordinance right now, it says that streetscape walls facing a collector or arterial shall be a masonry wall, with the exception that council can approve something otherwise. So,
yeah, I'm not inclined to approve that. It may match what's on the north side, but that's the mistake.
Which parts are vinyl? You were saying?
The columns are masonry, but the slats between.
In between. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
8600 is a collector instead of an arterial.
correct.
Yeah. Correct. If it were residential, like just a neighborhood, I would probably be okay with it, but just a heads up.
Doesn't 8600, does it change its status when the flyover bridge to New Bingham gets put in?
It's all a collector. 70-foot wide right-of-way from 56 to U-111.
What makes it change? I mean, what would change it? Like on 78th, when you go west of U-111, it's a collector because we're putting a roundabout there, which I don't like. But east of U-111, it's an arterial. So there's obviously something that designates if the same street can be a collector and an arterial. My question is the properties west of U-111 get built out and 8600 South gets higher use, does it change to a collector, especially or an arterial, when the flyover over Mountain View to New Bingham Highway gets put in, and it becomes a thoroughfare rather than going up to 90th?
the council could always change what the master plan shows, and I don't have that in front of me, but as it stands today, my recollection, and I don't know, Brian, if you have that, but it's currently designated as a collector. But you're thinking that due to the volume in the future, we're only collecting right-of-way widths for a collector road at this point.
Okay.
So,
All right, I saw Dave shaking his head in the back, so he says no.
arterial.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll be stuck with, now, we can get into the details of the 8600 South reimbursement agreement. That's a kind of a sub agreement to the master development agreement with this project. And yeah, we can get to that in a minute if the council wants, but our standards have changed. Our road standards have changed over the years. I believe it was 80 feet in years gone by, and now collector roads are 70 feet. So there's a little bit of a wiggle that 86 will have, but we can accommodate that through landscaping.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just wanted to jump,
I'm sorry, I was going to ask, because if we're all done, the only other thing that I wanted to say was a good thing is on page 7, I think it is. Just with the building setbacks, I'm just appreciative that the garage is set back 22 feet, even though the front yard is 18 feet. I was worried that vehicles, so I actually looked up a Ford F-150 and a Dodge Ram 1500. And the 2019 Ford F-150 is 20 feet long, and the Dodge Ram is 19.3 feet long.
That the
So-
extended cab, never mind.
Well, it probably is. I got a
Not counting
range,
trailer hitch.
but the thing the thing that's bothered me is we have some neighborhoods that have a really short driveway setback. So even just parking a regular car, you're fouling the sidewalk, which then it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just appreciative that the 22-foot setback would allow a Ford F-150 and a Dodge Ram
And
to
from
park.
previous comments, that's the reason we did make that change.
Hey, thank you for doing that.
So I want to echo Councilmember McConaughey's statement about the fence. My concern is we put up vinyl and I happen to be on all these people's Facebook things, and Harriman constantly, the complaint is that, well, they allege that kids, teenagers are going by and ruining vinyl fences. And what we don't want this to be is a development that then goes downhill. And I think your vinyl fence could contribute to that. So I think it would be worth, I know it will be more, but I think it would be worth it, and I would want to see it a masonry wall as well. Plus it you're developing a nice development, and that kind of sets the containment a little better than plastic. So I like that. I'm not sure what I feel about what our attorney has advised us. I do want to make sure that the amenities go in. And I kind of thought that's why we had the development agreement that we were doing all this work for. So those are my comments.
So to clarify, Councilmember Whitelock, and it would be good to give some clarity to Mr. Hogan, but on page 8, so that all of that yellow, that yellow dashed line representing the vinyl fence.
Anything on the perimeter of this development,
What
I
about
feel should be.
6700 West, which cuts through the middle? That's a collector road as well on our master plan. So again, the council has the ability to approve something other than masonry along that collector road. But I just want to get some clarification so they know how to update their plans.
Well, to be fair, the neighborhood to the north has vinyl fences all along it. So I'm not sure, can we as a city say, don't put in a vinyl fence? I mean,
Yes.
the whole side of the road there doesn't have any vinyl fences. Or doesn't have
Right,
any brick
but
fences.
that was a different council and a different day in our city. And if we want to move forward and elevate, perhaps this is a good moment to do that. In the interior, I'm okay. But anything on the perimeter, I would like to see masonry.
I had much of the same thought, actually, until I pulled up Street View on 6400 West going north from here, and it's the vinyl with the columns, and it looks fine. I mean, it's well taken care of. It's not a war zone as you know, other vinyl fences can become, especially on busier streets, especially those with like high school walking traffic or high school walking traffic, either one. Those tend to get beat up a little more. Yeah, I know.
Could become
The
safe
the
walking
HOA
route.
would maintain it, is that correct? Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't have the concerns about this one. I like it on the 90th South and U-111 having that masonry rock or something like that. I think is fine, but I'm fine with the vinyl on this for the most part. I think it's
On the perimeter?
on the north and east side. I'm okay with it. Yeah, I wouldn't be okay with it on U-111 or 90th, but I'm okay with it on the north and east side.
And I feel that there would be more concern if the HOA wasn't maintaining it, but I've been the president of many HOAs, and the slightest little thing is wrong with, you know, somebody's property, the HOA gets a call immediately. And so, and they get it corrected. And so, if it was private lots and the HOA was not maintaining it, I would feel it would be much more critical. But I do appreciate your comments.
Yeah. And just to emphasize, I would not be inclined to support the vinyl around the outer perimeter. On the inside, open a conversation, but not the out.
One other thing, if I could add, whatever you decide on that, I'd like to ask the attorneys to be sure that, and Ken, so you know, that we clarify in the development agreement that the fence will be maintained by the HOA, and it is the property of the HOA. We've seen here, this is Utah, this issue of who fixes the fence when a DUI driver hits it, when the snowplow ruins it, it just happens everywhere. And this is an opportunity to make that crystal clear so we don't have to deal with that issue. So if we'd make sure if it may be in there. Okay, thanks, Jared.
And I appreciate that, Robert. And in fact, this is one reason we've delayed this meeting a couple of months, is because we've tried to get everything we could think of in the developer's agreement.
So council, if I may then, so we can make sure we're bringing back to you a development agreement that's as close to your direction as possible. Can you give us I know we can't take formal votes in a work session, but just a straw poll or a nod of head. Yeah, we need some direction from the body. Are you comfortable with the vinyl fence, or you want to maintain by the HOA along the perimeter? Do you want a masonry along the perimeter?
We might need to ask each individual, because I think there's some that are okay with it, the way it's shown here, and some that are not, so. I know Councilmember McConaughey and Councilmember Whitelock are not okay with the vinyl.
Well, and just to...
Councilmember Jacob is, I would be okay with the vinyl. So that's like a 2 there.
Just to clarify, right?
We have 3 with the vinyl. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, though, our code right now requires that it be masonry unless the council specifically grants an exception.
Yes, correct.
That's
Correct.
where just because the neighbors have something that was older and out of date, I don't feel that warrants an exception. There were reasons why we made that change, a lot of issues that we ran into. So that's why I would not be inclined to support an exception. So there would have to be 4 folks in favor of an exception.
So I'd like to hear from Councilmember Burton and Councilmember Lamb.
I recommend we go with the current code.
Current code says masonry or an exception, so which part of the current code are you exactly referring to?
You're good. The masonry part. On that road, I would like to see masonry.
And I'm okay with the vinyl.
So there's, oh, I said vinyl. So there's 4 that said vinyl.
Said vinyl?
Thank you.
And to clarify, I would be open to the exception for the interior, but not the outside.
Well, Mayor and council, again, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I really am grateful that Rob took some time out of his family vacation to come down and articulate the concerns that we have about one of the potential betterments to the community. The other two that I see from this development that would benefit this side of West Jordan would be, of course, the water tank, which is needed not only for this project, but for the surrounding area for Zone 5 South water. And then the other huge investment and benefit to this part of town is the connection, the completion of 90th South from 64th West to U-111. That represents a significant amount of money, and so I'm glad that Rob framed the discussion tonight to really ask the council the questions, what is it that matters to you? And that will help us fine-tune the agreements that Jared and Duncan have been working so hard on. And we're close. We can step through, and Denise has hung out here to help us if you have any questions about the reimbursement of the financing of the water tank. And that's a sub-portion of this master development agreement that you will see. But I wanted to make your time worth it, Denise. But I guess that would be the natural segue to go into the water tank.
I had a quick question on the street, though, really quick.
Okay.
On 90th South, we're talking completion full width?
No.
This developer?
It's the northern half.
We're talking half width.
And we've got an exhibit that we can show you. Oh, page 7 of your handout.
Yeah, I was trying to make sense of that. I've been staring at that for a little while there. It looks like a cross-section of depth, right?
No. When I first saw this exhibit, that's where my mind went to. But if you were to take that and just overlay it on an aerial, that's how that works. So if you were to picture the 90th South from 64th to U-111.
So that does not mean 36 foot of asphalt deep?
No, it doesn't. That's the width. That's the width, not the depth.
Right. Okay. I was wondering about that. I was thinking that was an awfully deep street, 58 feet.
So
It's a ways.
for example,
Earthquake
here on
proof.
the right-hand side, where the laser pointer is, this is 6400 West, and then that goes north and south. Well, basically, no, sorry, north, just north at this point. The school district owns the hard corner. Up here, the elementary school is under construction. They have plans for a middle school down right here. That's not under construction just yet. So the road, Mr. Hogan would acquire the property from the school district, and Mr. Hogan actually would build all of this, but there would need to be a transition from the existing 90th South, is that Duck Creek subdivision? Copper?
Something like that,
Something like that. Anyway, it's built out full width in that subdivision. So this triangle represents that transition from the full width down to the northern half width. Now, per city code, the city would be responsible for 22 feet of that northern half width. And that's what this hatching shows, the city's obligation to pay for. And then 36 feet, it would be project related to OMR. And then U-111 would match up here. We'd need another transition, acceleration, deceleration lanes on U-111.
Full width intersection at U-111.
Right. So,
Who are the others?
does that make more sense now?
Who are the others?
Whoever comes along on the south side.
Future half by others, whoever that may be.
So my question is then, that 58-foot width then that will be constructed, we're talking one lane in each direction and a turn lane?
You got it.
Bike lane, shoulder,
There would be a bike lane on the north side.
On the north side only? Okay, not on the south side. I'm just trying to think of what to compare it to, because seems like halfway roads get constructed and then left like that.
Up the hill. Yeah, when you go up
Right.
the hill, this light would be like that.
Yeah, 70th gets very narrow at the top. It's not 56 feet wide up there.
No, but it would be similar to that, where one side is.
Like 56 was from
Like
70th
56
to
was,
82.
56 was like that before it was improved this past year.
Right. And this would stay that way until development came to the south half of the
Correct.
road. Okay, it gives me a little bit of pause, just because this is, I think, gonna be the main in and out of this neighborhood is gonna be 90th, at least east-west speaking. And with the first phases going in on 90th South, that's where we're gonna start this, even more so. And then with, you know, the intersection improvements, that's the second part of my question, is the intersection improvements at 90th and New Bingham. Now where the road sweeps to the south, you know, as it crosses Mountain View and to the west, and then the road bends to the south, takes a left turn, you know, and heads toward Copperton. There's no way to stay on 90th and get on that full width to come out to this neighborhood unless you go down to 6400 West and take a right and come back into it. So I know that's not this developer's issue, but are we looking at
We are.
that intersection? I know there's
Yes.
been discussions. Is it gonna be, is the plan to turn it like we did at Old Bingham and 90th and New Bingham and 78th? Is that the future plan there?
It is. We're working on plans right now, and if the council is interested, we have some preliminary designs that we could share with you.
Is it basically, though, the left turn into a T and 90th South becomes the main east-west?
There's two options. I don't know if Dave has the details of that or not.
Regardless, so those intersection
But we are
improvements
working
on
on
schedule.
a smoother transition, because
Do we know how that timing would coincide with this project's timing?
I don't believe that the realignment is funded at all.
Okay, so it's still, there's.
Quick question. I just want to time check really to kind of pace ourselves and make sure that we prioritize what we need. So we've been at this for about an hour and 20 minutes. The next two conversations, are they anticipated to be about as long? Because if so, we're tracking to wrap up at about 10:45 for the closed session where.
We do that a lot.
Totally up to you. I think we've covered the staff's main concerns per Mr. Wall's comments. The water tank and the road issues, we feel fairly confident that we've got that buttoned up very clearly per our previous conversations. It was the discussion about the amenities, the timing, the assurances, what the council expected. We knew that was going to take the lion's share of the conversation tonight. So unless you have more detailed questions with the development agreements, I don't want to obligate these two or Rob and his staff, but the thought was, following our conversation here tonight, within the next few days, the council will get this fund packet and start to read it, so you're prepared to talk about it on the 31st.
Can I request a paper copy of that, please? Typically, I like online, but I prefer that paper.
Could I add something? We're going to work as hard as we can over the next 4 days to try and get it out at the beginning of the week. But what the process needs to be is that we'll finish up based on what we've heard here tonight. We'll provide that to the Planning and Public Works Department and the City Manager's Office to get their approval. Then we'll send it to Kent so you can look at it. And then my recommendation to you is we'll get it to you hopefully midweek next week. And feel free to call on anything. If it doesn't make sense, I can say because I didn't write a lot of it, we have no pride of authorship. No, I'm just kidding. I drive these guys nuts because I make them let me look at it so much, but.
We do have a holiday next week too, don't forget.
We do, and we want you to look at it, and if you want to march through it line by line in 2 weeks, we can. My recommendation is that if you have questions, call us and let's work through those, and then we can shoot the resolution of that out to everybody as your questions come up. so that by the time we hit 2 weeks from now, we've gone through it that way. And I'm not discouraging you to go through it. I'd encourage you to go through it. If I wasn't doing what I do for a living, it would probably put me to sleep, but please take whatever time you need and call. Any questions you have, please ask.
Is the wall issue going to be part of the development agreement, or since we have code in place, would it require a separate resolution just to address that?
No, it'll be in the development plan, and it'll be, if you adopt the development plan,
So if we have
de facto
significant
approval.
sticking issues on the wall, we're going to have to vote against the entire plan because of that wall.
Yeah, you could split it out. if
I've
you'd
been
like.
known to veto entire budgets based on a wall.
Oh, man, there it is.
I've been resisting the whole conversation. It finally, I broke.
Oh, we can look at the verbiage of that, Chris. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Council, I feel like, especially in David's absence, my job is to make sure that staff has a very clear direction from the council as a body. I want to clarify something tonight. Specifically, it's been particularly a point. Right now, the assurances that the amenities, particularly the clubhouse, will be built include, in my mind, that they can't record the plat for 1B until the clubhouse is done. The sequential phasing, so they can't go on to phase 2, 3, 4, and 5 until the clubhouse is done. And the assurance bond. Sure.
We would collect the assurance bond no later than the recording of phase 1B, per our current code.
Collect the assurance bond. That's what's in the development agreement now.
I would have to.
I think it is, yes. Yeah.
Now, I heard Rob discuss experiences in other cities and request for more than that, or a better understanding, a pro forma. I heard Ken discuss his willingness and his plan to pour the profits from the first phase into the building of the amenities, particularly the clubhouse. But that's not in the development agreement. What I'm looking for, council, is direction from you as a body again. Are you comfortable with what's in the development agreement? Do you want to ask the developer to put or memorialize somehow what he mentioned about profits or pro forma into the development agreement? And if so, we got to figure out what that would look like. I may be opening a can of worms, but right now it's not clear, and I want to make sure it's clear so when it comes back to you, you're assured, you know exactly what you're getting and what you have to do.
Any comments then from council?
Well, I would like an assurance that that's going to occur. 400 units, that's a lot of bodies and a lot of cars and a lot of potential residents. And if they don't have these amenities, if they don't go in, we already have the west side that feels they don't have a rec center or amenities. And that's just gonna make it worse. So I would like some kind of assurance in there that.
I'm actually not worried about them selling 400 units. I mean, have you seen the growth out there? How many units have gone out there already? Ivory's looking at building more out there. 400 units are gonna hit really easy. I'm not concerned about them hitting 400 units.
We had the rec center on the ballot a couple of years ago. The folks out on that west side were very unhappy it didn't pass. I think most of the votes that didn't want it to pass came from the east side. And I know that there's some of those folks that are farther west and north in the Kearns Improvement District or whatever it is for the Kearns Ochre Fitness Center. So I think there's a lot of folks out there that would really like to participate in a rec center a lot closer to their home than coming either to Gene Fulmer or even going over to the Ochre Park Fitness Center.
And I was just going to comment on Chad's comment. The economy and the markets are living and breathing. So I don't, right now, I don't question them selling 400 units, but all it takes is interest rate changing, all it takes is something happening, and then 400 units is more difficult to sell.
Yeah, if this was 2008, I would.
So it's all a guessing game.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why he
Which
mentioned.
is why I'm
the rest.
I'm not concerned. I think you're gonna sell 400 units.
It's just as he mentioned earlier in the day, it's a risk.
Well, yeah, and the risk is his, so that's what I'm getting at. It's not the city's risk. It's not I mean, the risk is, that's the only place I want to be sure that the city's insulated here, that nobody comes to the city and says, hey, where's my amenity XYZ? It's like, hey, that's between you and the developer. That's not us. However, we'll be dragged into that just because we will be, just because it happens. So I want to make sure that whatever steps we take, we put in place to say, hey, make it crystal clear that it's not the city who's putting in these pocket parks, these amenities, these little things that are gonna make this a nice place to live. It's not the city doing that. It's the developer doing that. And I know it's gonna sound like it's the city doing it, but it needs to be crystal clear, however that can be made, that it's not the city's issue if things tank, if the economy tanks, if you, heaven forbid, go out of business, or whatever bad thing happens, and this doesn't come to fruition the way we want it to. It's not the city building, the city doesn't build the city. The developers build the city, and this is not the city doing this. So I just want that to be clear. We've had some other issues with developers building something that didn't work out the way people wanted it to work out with, the quality of their home, and coming back to the city saying, why didn't you X, Y, Z? And the city saying, whoa, we did what we could do. And now, yeah, I'm sorry, but what can I do? So, you know what I mean? I just want that to be clear, that it's not the
Okay,
city.
I might just say that nobody's gonna work harder to make this a success, because I have everything to lose with all the upfront cost of the tank, 90th South, and the amenities going into that first 400 units. I've got to see it succeed, and I've got to go past that 400 units before I ever make a dime.
I'm not
We
as,
will make sure, council member, that I think it already is, but we'll go back and revisit the language to make sure it's clear that the amenities are those of the HOA and that it's not a city obligation. And in that regard, just let me reaffirm, my concern isn't so much that it'll get built. If it gets built, it's maintaining it at the cost that it'll cost to maintain it. But we can make sure that in the agreement, it's clear that these amenities belong to the HOA. And I know it's already clear that there will be an opportunity for members outside the OMR to join. That's not fleshed out, but that's in the agreement. And so to the extent we can, we'll make it clear.
I'm not as worried about the amenities. One of the things I do worry about is the commercial. We saw a lot of really frustrated folks who had moved out on the west side of the city before Smith's came out on 56th and 78th, and they were always getting mad at us because there was no grocery store that was a reasonable distance from them. Going back to the phasing, if there's an opportunity for a grocer to come in there sooner, that is the one phase I would not be opposed to leapfrogging and allowing to come in at any point possible. If you want to start with that before anything else, I would be supportive of that.
And there's certainly, the way this is structured, that's a great point. And the way this is structured, they could come in and build, if they acquired the property, which from our last meeting, they told us they weren't going to 4 and 5 right now, they could build phase 5 first. Although it has to proceed relative to the phasing plan, but they could come in and add additional phases as they desire.
If there's an opportunity, I would be okay exempting the commercial from that phasing rather than saying this one has to wait till the end.
One thing we do have going for us with Harmon's, the gal that's over the decision-making there lives a little bit further to the north, and she wants a grocery store in her backyard.
Shorter commute.
Awesome.
Okay, are we ready to move to the next item on the?
Yeah, unless you had any questions about the reimbursement of the water tank, or I just feel bad for Denise, but we can save it to the 31st if the council wants.
Thank you very much for being here and
thank you, everybody, for your
part of
time
this tonight.
It's been 1 hour, 31 minutes, so if the other two are just as long, that puts us starting very, very late.
We can control that.
Okay, item 9B, discussion
We're
regarding
the
highway
ones that keep
development,
talking about it.
Jones Ranch,
we can
Scott
solve it.
Langford. And with this item, I think the important thing that we want to understand tonight is that we are we're discussing what's under the application that's being submitted. Because I know that Ivory Homes is looking at a lot of different things out there on that side of town, but what we want to talk about tonight, in the essence of time, is what is under the application.
So I've not seen the application. I have zero background or information
Scott
on this
Langford
one.
can fill you in.
There's nothing on, okay.
Yeah, so we have a current application in from Ivory Homes. Ray is pulling it up, but let me point to the current application called Jones Ranch. Includes, so here's OMR across the street, okay? Yeah, we got Bacchus Highway. The current application takes in, this is High Point right here under construction. Ivory's doing that subdivision. So it includes that little sliver to the south, and then all this property here to the west of OMR. So that's the current application. This exhibit shows an expansion into the gravel pit here, and then some areas, and Mr. Gambriels can talk about their correspondence with the Jones family and why they're showing that. So.
No handouts?
What's that?
No handouts for us?
Kayleen's always looking for a handout.
We received this information about 4:15 today.
So I guess my question is, what's the purpose of this? Is this informational for us, or is this, we're supposed to be providing feedback?
Could I answer that?
Oh, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chris Gamvroulis. I'm president of Ivory Development, and I'm here to talk about, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that are changing. Actually, over the last 3 weeks, a few things have been changing, and we've been working on the Jones Ranch, which is, as Scott indicated, is the 287 acres, which includes this piece here, and that. 3 weeks ago, we received, 30 days ago, we went under contract with the Vicki Jones Trust for just under 600 acres in this location. Now, this is on your master plan as Research Park Industrial Office. Right across the highway right here is the Lodestar project. So we're right on we're right west, so U-111, Old Bingham that comes through here. And so there's just around 600 acres there. Oh, that's much better. And I've got actually, and I don't know who's running this slideshow, but Ray is maybe one more, Ray. Maybe go to the next one. Go back, actually. We'll put it in context, sorry. So 3 weeks ago, we received a call from Brian Jones, who's the representative of the Vicki Jones Trust, who indicated that the property that you've just spent the last hour and a half discussing is no longer under contract, and asked us to master plan it. We have these other just under 300 acres here and 600 acres here.
Wait, can I interrupt here?
Yeah.
I'd like to invite our developer who's just here.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Mr. Hogan?
Okay.
Because we have a conflict then about.
So I think just for our purposes, so we had, for our purposes tonight, we're just gonna show you what the plan looks like from a really 30,000 foot level, get some feedback from you, because there's some questions that we have for you about the process, and I think we just let the attorneys kind of sort out the applications.
Well, the other thing that was a concern to us too is that I know how much you've got a huge interest in this west side.
Yeah.
But we wanted to focus on what was under application.
Is this piece right here?
Yeah, that area there, not even that to the south, because, I mean, you know, already it's 8:30, we don't want to be here till 11:30. And so we wanted to try to hold that to the application that
Sure.
you have in.
Well, this was informational for you so that you understood what was going on real time. And then we'll spend more time on the Jones Ranch, the application. If you go to the next slide, Ray. So right now, and we have 2 LOIs right now for property right here that would go in the industrial area. What we don't know is whether New Bingham Highway continues
in that direction, or whether it turns and we start going more parallel. And so that's something that we're gonna be working out with your staff over time. I wanted to give you an idea of how we are seeing the transition of uses, where we go really heavy industrial, industrial commercial, office, and then into some residential that then goes into other residential, so that we're feathering that out, because I don't think we want to have we don't want to have heavy industrial next to low-density residential immediately. I think we want to transition that and be a little bit thoughtful about that. So we just wanted to give you an idea of just where that was. So the next slide. So this is the Jones Ranch bubble diagram here. The property has a fair amount of topography. It's about 60 feet of fall from here to here. This is the substation that's right here. This area is the project that we're developing right now called High Point, and this is the extension of Stokesley Boulevard that runs along that foothill there. So we've extended it actually to about right there, and then as the rest of this property develops, and this is part of the gravel pit, that's the Staker Parsons gravel pit, and we have an understanding and a letter of intent with them. We're going to PSA here fairly quickly on this 85 acres, so that we can master plan the whole thing. But I want to give you an idea of what the densities, so what you call medium density residential is really what High Point is, which is, 8 to 12,000 square foot lots. And the idea is continuing, just having that butt up right there. This is the substation. What's identified as park detention is a regional detention facility that's on your detention, on your master plan for that. Now, it would look, if built as designed, it looks like the one on 8200 South at just west of where Mountain View Corridor goes over. It's just a big pit, it's a very functional detention basin. We would like to turn it into a park along here. There's a lot of passive open space through here. This is the Barney's through here. One thing that's different about going south along U-111 from 8600 then going north there's only wood power line. There's just the power poles, but they're just the wood ones. And so along here from the substation and going south all the way down to Old Bingham, there's another set of the large power poles that go through there. And that's set off about 110 feet back from what the right-of-way of U-111 would be. And so we want to make that an amenity. We don't want to park trucks under it or, have it look unlandscaped. So our idea is to do some landscaping along there, work with Rocky Mountain Power to turn that into a nice amenity, because there's already a trail that's planned along U-111, and we want that to continue. We can pull that in. We've got some active open space areas here, medium density residential. Actually, go to the next one. I think we could jump into some table of uses. So mixed use development here.
Quick question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
On that along U-111, have you made arrangements for the fact that it's going to widen one day? U-111 widen, and so as part of your plan, you're including that as?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the future full width is planned for the build out for UDOT. And the locations, the full access locations are at 90th and 86. So go to the next one. So mixed development, this is about 23 acres. We see this as commercial with some multifamily in there to activate the commercial. The next slide. Higher density residential, this is what you call high density residential. This is 5 to 10 units per acre. So these are small lots, single family, detached homes. They're between 3 and 7,000 square foot lots. Very similar patterns to what you would see in Daybreak at those densities. The next slide. Medium density, again, this is 8 to 12,000 square foot lots, matching up what's along here, and then along Stokesley, because this would have been the little bit higher density. So the closer we are to U-111, the more we're putting the density towards U-111. And then the next slide, this is low and very low density. There's a really, really nice shelf up here where it would just be very low density. Those would be half-acre lots. It sits up on this ridge. The creek comes around on both sides. It'd be some great view lots. So those would be, you know, really nice half-acre lots up there or larger. And up in that 20 acres is probably only about 35 lots. It's not, but as you'll see, on the overall of for all 600 acres, the area that's low density residential represents 25% of the whole 600 acres. If we were looking at just the current Jones Ranch application, which is only 287 acres, it's almost half of the land area that's set aside for low to very low density residential. And the idea is to match what we've done at Hyde Point and what happened here at the Sycamores, and to carry that along this bench west of Stokesley, getting into you know, much lower density. So the next one. So this is the Parks and Trails map, passive open space, couple of parks and trails, a park amenity. One of the things that's great about being able to master plan 600 acres is that we can do something really substantial with passive and active open space. So go to the next slide. This is a regional, just a regional view of the area and what's been set aside in open space. And I wanted to let you know that coming in and just doing, you know, if we came and just took down 50 acres and brought in a single plan, 50-acre application, 150 lots, it would be just standard, very cookie cutter. We've done that out here because the fractured land ownership patterns to the east side of this. So starting at about 5600 West over here, we actually built this project here. That was called Bloomfield Farms. We did that in about 2004. There's a small park there, but you can see that this same trail runs down. This is where that detention basin is. We also did this project right here and right here. This was called Bloomfield Estates, and this was called Bloomfield Heights. But I wanted to demonstrate to you the difference between what those look like under a very structured Euclidean zoning standard versus what can happen in a PC zone. If you go to the next slide, this is the trail section that goes through Bloomfield Heights that meets your current ordinance. The wash goes through there. It's in native vegetation with the trail. Actually, the sidewalk functions as the trail. Go to the next one. This is what it looks like from the ground. Google Earth image. When we were building this out, literally every day, I would get a phone call and someone would say, "When's the landscaping going in?" And I'd say, "This is the standard. This is what it looks like." We want to actually activate this space in a much healthier way all through this trail system. Because if you go back a couple of slides, go to the regional, if you look at this, this is a 30-minute walk. This is 1.5 miles, the scale. And so going from there to about there is a 30-minute walk. And then it's another, but you're making these connections because you can go under Mountain View Corridor right here and then go into, and I'm just blanking on the name of this project that Peterson did. This is Grizzly Way. Stone Creek, thank you. But it does connect, and you can see how long that trail connection is. And this is just a snip from, from a Google Earth image. But the opportunity to really create some substantial open space here is a unique opportunity because of the scale of this. And then next slide. Go. This is through Bloomfield Estates, which is west of, it's just on the west side of the Mountain View Corridor. But again, this is that, and I can't remember what the width was on that, Scott. It's probably 80 feet on the section, on the open space section. But you can see that the standard is really not that substantial. So if you go to the next one.
Who maintains all that?
Sorry?
Who maintains all that, open space?
You do.
Okay.
Is that the last one? Okay, there was another slideshow. So I wanted to show you, we did some, a little more detailed work just on the trails and amenities for these areas. As we start from the east side at 6400 West, this is where that picks up, and actually that trail section, the last picture I showed you is about right there. So this just kind of continues through Three Forks. Yeah, this continues through Three Forks over here, goes through Bloomfield Estates, and then crosses and goes over to that detention basin, okay? Passive open space, but really nicely planted and maintained. Large open space area here for active amenities. And then you see how this trail system comes up into the Oakers. At about Stokesley, we see this trail system changing from like an asphalt trail to probably like decomposed granite or something that's a lot less intense and feels more native and more natural there. So decomposed granite, you've probably seen it a million times. You didn't know what if you didn't know what it was, but landscapers will put it between planter boxes, like in a planting garden, and it's the black rock that's in there. And it's a really nice way to do a trail system, because once we start getting further west here, we're really getting into some really native vegetation and into the Oakers, and we're trying to bring that down. But one of the elements of this is to take this Barney's Wash and to actually try to pick up and detain within the wash itself some of the storm drain and make those features. Go to the next slide. So on the west side of U-111, we're showing, some examples of things that, like these dams that would be put in these areas. So you can see how that might function in an area like this. We have a big slope right here, so it comes up, but that's why these lots up here are, going to be just tremendous value, great premium lots, is because all this open space down below. And then calling out different, I know this is hard to read, but in different points along the trail, there's different amenities that get placed and planted and maintained at a much higher level. So the next one. So again, what ends up in our plan, obviously this trail, there's got to be a connection here at 8600 because that's where it's going to be lit. There'll be a signalized intersection there. Coming down, I've actually built a swim and tennis club, and I can tell you that so in Lehigh, we built a club that has 11 tennis courts, 6 of them under roof, 5 outdoor, 3 swimming pools, a fitness facility, reception center, and all of that. It's about 25, it serves a community of 835. We have 300 outside memberships that we sold, just strictly for tennis. It's really a premier tennis center in Utah County in East Lehigh. It's about 25% of the size of what you looked at before to serve that community. And so we would be looking to right-size an amenity for this neighborhood, not looking to build a rec center. But it would be a large amenity that would be sustainable by the homeowners association. And that would go in this location here. We don't see putting multifamily, higher density around this. We see that activating the commercial space on the corner and having the rest of it be what you call medium and higher densities here. And this bleeds in from these neighborhoods to the east. So the next slide. So just more exhibits. So this is a little bit more detail of what the connectivity is along Stokesley and the bigger roads. And the next slide, and then the next one. So just more examples of that. That's it, I think. So we wanted to give you a very high-level view of what we were proposing. Our proposal right now on the Jones Ranch on the 287 acres is, I believe it's about 4.5 units per acre. What's that?
Larry agrees.
Larry agrees. Is that about right, Larry? Yeah. So not to the extent of we think that it makes sense. If you go back to the very first presentation and just look at that original land use map, we think it makes sense to set aside more acreage on the east side for the lower densities. Even there, that's great. So matching the densities of those that are surrounding. So you've got matching densities. You've got a little bit higher densities here surrounding the amenity, multifamily around the commercial. No multifamily on the west side. And then this entire area up in here is low density. There are large parcels that are in between these two pieces. There's different ownership in this area. There's different ownership of Jones family ownership here and here. And then some over on the south of New Bingham.
Chris?
Yeah.
Is this your land use map? Do you have our land use map that we can compare them?
I don't have it in this presentation. This is very close. It is higher density than what your density map looks like, but in terms of land uses, this is very close to that. You have on your land use map some commercial, or the desire to have some commercial on the west side there, and we've taken that out for two reasons. One, because you actually have, I think, 80 acres of commercial here, which is about 70 acres too many overall. At the four corners, it's about an aggregate of about 80 acres total. But you've got about 110 feet off the back of those power lines before you would even see some commercial. It would make a very challenging commercial location just because of visibility from U-111. So we think it makes sense to consolidate the commercial on the east side at that intersection. That's where it's going to make the most sense to have that. We've been working with the staff on this for about 6 months. This is the binder that we've been working on all of the infrastructure studies. I'd be happy to leave this with you, or if you want to pass it around for really. If you really want to be bored,
leave it to Scott, and we can pick it up from him.
This is actually the newest one. This is actually recently updated.
Scott, can you make that into a movie?
Make it into a
A movie, yeah. This is one that we did on a property in Lehigh called Holbrook Farms. That is about 700 acres. It goes all the way from the Jordan River, which at that location is about 2,300 west in Lehigh, past Redwood Road, and then up along the south boundary of the NSA Center. So it's about 700 acres, so kind of the same size. What we did in Lehigh, and what we're working towards here, is an area plan that studies all of the infrastructure up front. It dials in equivalent residential units, how that works with commercial, to size water tanks, sewer systems, storm drain systems. Lehigh has its own power company, so there's actually a power study in here, so that we could size the substations that were necessary to service the property, plus all the design guidelines for the architecture. We took a few members of your staff on a site visit yesterday, and they were able to tour and look at, we're about a third of the way through that project. But we've done, this is a joint venture we've been doing with the Boyer Company. They've been doing the commercial and industrial part of the Holbrook Farms project. But We've done this a lot. We have a 1,300 acre piece in Eagle Mountain that has 3,800 units where we've got a development agreement very similar to what you've been looking at earlier. We went through the same process as this, where all of the infrastructure is studied up front. So at the end of the day, after everything's decided, including the land use, because that's all baked in here, as well as an economic analysis, there's a financial analysis to demonstrate whether or not the project is sustainable. So once we've worked through all of that with the decision makers and the policy makers and the recommendations from the Planning Commission and you, there's a final document that when someone says, did you look at the transportation there? And you can say, yeah, in fact, I've got a whole section, I've got a whole transportation study that's in here, and it studies the whole area. And it's been a very helpful tool. So that's what we've been working towards on the Jones Ranch. We're going to be expanding our efforts there immediately on the industrial. I know there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of economic development activity. Our plan on the industrial is to do something very similar to this and come in with a master plan for the whole area. What's been happening with the industrial and the manufacturing and the Lodestar project and the data centers and all of those things that have been going on is the same thing that's really been happening with residential, and that is very fractured planning, very fractured projects that have been coming in. This project's 85 acres. How do we make the water work on that? This one's 100 acres. How do we make the water work on that? Is there some synergies between those two things? How do the roads line up? Our goal on the economic development side of this and the industrial is to do what we would do on a residential, but to do it at that scale. So that when there is a user that comes in and sits down with the mayor and says, hey, we're looking for 80 to 100 acres and we're project XYZ, it's very easy to pull that out and to know that the water's been sized properly and the roads are there and the road patterns, so that we can have some more cohesive planning with the industrial and the commercial.
We, remember that when we went to EDCU and we had that meeting
Yeah.
about the mega site, does this area include that part?
Potentially it does, and the real challenge is New Bingham Highway. And that is because of the way that it diagonals through this. What a mega site's looking for is a really nice, square, rectangular piece that doesn't have roads cutting through the middle of it, right? So part of the exercise here, in order to be able to bring to you something that would be a mega site scale, which is 400 acres or bigger, is to make sure that we've sized everything properly. And if you look at EDCU's list of requirements, then they want to know that all the infrastructure's there. They want to be able to take that out to market and give them a book, right, for those users and be able to hand them that book. And so that's our goal here, is to do something there. Now, you're probably saying, not only is it late, and I told my wife I thought I'd be home by 7. I looked at your agenda and I was like, I'm going to be home by 7. So I wasn't expecting to be here this late either.
Never tell your wife when a council meeting gets over. Boy, have I learned that.
I've been doing this for 25 years. I've probably been to more meetings than everybody here combined in my 25 years, and she's used to it now. But she runs homeowners association, so it's even. So why would we be really interested in managing a commercial center? Why does this matter? Why does this industrial matter to us as a residential home builder and developer? Well, we want it to be done right. We want it to be done thoughtfully. We don't want it to be done in a fractured way. We want the entryways to look better. We want to think about where the trucks are parked, where the users are. I sat down with your economic development department about a month or so ago, and some of you were there. Corbin, I don't remember. You were there, right? Just before. And then there was a user, and we actually received an LOI on that, Mayor, with interest on this property. But we want to make sure that they're not going to park a bunch of trucks along a major corridor, that's going to be done very thoughtfully, and there's going to be landscaping, because I am a greedy home builder, and I want to sell a lot of homes, and it's going to make it a lot better for us if we can show that this was master planned in a more thoughtful way, and I think the outcomes will be better. So that's really our interest in doing this. And so we do have an agreement with Jones. We're gonna be bringing an application for that in the next couple of days. But because we were already coming with the Jones Ranch for tonight, you got one slide. I'm just giving you a little bit of an idea of the scale of what's going on out here. And we hope that that being able to come in and do a really cohesive master plan on all of it gives some comfort to you and to future council members. Our plan is going to be asking for some flexibility within villages so that we can build to the market. So what happens is that there are minimums and maximums of densities with a guideline of a target within a village that you might say, well, we can go to this many units here, but you can't go below this many units. And what that does is gives you assurance that we won't build an 80-story building on one village and then be done, right? Like, you've got to distribute out your densities throughout the whole project. But if the market changes and the market is demanding more larger lots, then we can lose some lots and pick them up in another village where the market might be demanding smaller lots for a lower price in the future. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. So it'd be very similar to how Daybreak's development agreement is written. There's a lot of flexibility, but there's still bumpers on what they do. And Rob, who was at South Jordan when that was approved, can tell you that can work and has worked as a really good example.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
So on the Jones Ranch property, when I think you were in the meeting, we had a meeting in the conference room. We talked about the water and the infrastructure. Are you looking at doing like a PID, Public Infrastructure District, to help facilitate getting that built into the Jones Ranch, or depending on the city to do that, or?
It's a great question. And I think, the PID is a brand new tool.
Right.
Just became law May 14th. And so I think being able to use that as a tool is something that we're absolutely willing to look at and interested in doing. There's a lot of comprehensive infrastructure planning along here, particularly from the water side, because of what's happening in zone 5, 6, and the future zone 7. And it may make sense to do a larger scale one so that it can actually be done over time, and the city knows what the financial tool is going to be. I don't know that we know the answer to that yet, Councilman, but I do know that we know that water tanks have to be built. Our company currently is building a 2 million gallon tank in Park City right now, and we're building a 1 million gallon tank in Lehigh right now. And it is, if you're going down Redwood Road, you pass the NSA Center and you look up to the west, those are our crews building a 1 million gallon tank and all the infrastructure, the pump stations, everything. So we know we can do it and we have the capacity to do it. That's probably the biggest gating factor here. And whether we finance that up front and do a PID or do reimbursement agreements later, all of those tools are available.
Right, because I think that developers in cities, and I'm speaking a little more globally than just West Jordan, but I think we ought to have some dialogue, because what I'm seeing is when projects come in like this, cities are getting impacted with this is my term, hyper growth that we have to react to, and having the capacity to be able to react. And so that's why I'm kind of glad to see like the PID and some of these other options where developers are helping with some of the infrastructure, because I think we're currently building 3 tanks, or trying to build 3 tanks, 4 tanks, and 5. So I mean, we're talking like 6 water tanks.
You're digging test pits on one of our properties currently.
Right. But you understand what I'm saying, though, that cities are in a hyper-reactive growth mode, because we have to react to 200 acres here, 300 acres there, and the demand that takes. So that's why I'm saying I think having this dialogue is beneficial, because I think we need to be able to understand your side of the equation, and we also need the developers to understand the city side of the equation.
Yeah, I just anecdotally, I'll tell you, there's a piece of property that, so this is Hyde Point up here in the corner, and immediately kitty corner is our Oak Ridge Park project there. There's a 10-acre site for an elementary school site that's there. The Jordan District does not want an elementary school site there. They want to trade us that property for a property on the west side of Stokesley, so that there would be an elementary school site that would be embedded in Jones Ranch somewhere. So we're working with them, we're working with staff, we've come in, and it's only 10 acres, and it's 30-something lots, and it's an additional face to Oak Ridge. There's no water capacity. And so this fractured development patterns are becoming more problematic. Doing something at this scale and being able to solve these problems globally for 700 acres at a time or 500 acres at a time is a real value. And I hope that we can build those homes there once we solve Zone 5's water problem. And we're trying to accommodate that right now by giving access to the city to do some surveying and some test pits. But if it's not done at a 600-acre scale, it's going to be done at 25-acre scales, and that's mind-numbing for Dave Murphy more than anybody, and maybe even Scott, you know. I think it's really helpful if we can do that at this scale. So I know that these projects can scare the public because it looks like, wow, look at all the stuff that's coming in at once. Well, this is a 20-year build-out. The impact of this doesn't happen overnight. It just doesn't, number one. Number two, it allows for really good comprehensive planning that if I were to come in tomorrow and with 50 acres right there and have you react to that application, you would have to react to it. And I don't think that that's the best outcome is going to come from that. We think the best outcome is going to come from, you know, a really thoughtful overall master plan. So thank you for your time tonight. I've been shorter than.
Well, has anybody else got questions for Chris before? Okay, Corbin.
All right, Mayor, Council, I need to clarify a couple things and then make you aware of one other thing. Chris, you mentioned that you've been working with our staff for about 6 months. I want to make it clear and get it on the record. That's just in relation to the property west of Bacchus Highway. Tonight, this is the first we've seen from Ivory about any conflicting issues relating to the property for Ochre Mountain Resort. To our knowledge, Ochre Mountain Resort has that area under contract. As Chris said, if that's not the case, that's for attorneys to sort out. We have not been actively working with two different developers on the same property at the same time. I just want to make that really clear. Second, I'm glad Chris has brought up the need for master planning. Recently, we've been having discussions internally about the need to improve our master planning for all of the west side, everything west of 64th South, or 64th West, excuse me. But not only this area, not only the property owned by the Jones family, the area that Ivory has under contract, but all of the property owners here, as well as the property north of the Sycamores, the Woods property, and so on. We need citywide master planning in this area. We need citywide master planning, or city-initiated west side master planning to include transportation, water, wastewater, stormwater, land use, and the intersection of all of those issues, and to make sure that master planning fits in well with the broader regional master planning that's occurring among the Southwest Quadrant cities. We have a meeting set up for next week as staff to further our conversations on that issue. We'll need to work closely with the property owners. I appreciate that Ivory's taken a global perspective on that issue. We'll need to work with them. But as we've seen industrial uses come in and request large amounts of water, and another one requests large amounts of wastewater or major transportation needs, we have realized we cannot be making these decisions one parcel at a time. We don't know how the decision to approve this economic development project will affect the remaining land use and the remaining opportunities for economic development. If we approve one, what does that do to the other? That's why we need some serious master planning and some serious work to make sure our existing infrastructure master plans are all coordinated and working together.
Along those lines, this is a question to be answered another time, but it was about a year and a half ago or so that we made a big push to reignite the general plan committee and ask them to get involved. I'd be curious what they've been doing. I know that there were some missteps where we had them get involved, but then it was like a pre-hearing before application changes, and we said, no, we want them looking specifically at the future land use map and helping plan those areas on the west side. We're actually looking like Mountain View Corridor and west at that point, so I'd be curious to hear where we're at, because I don't think we've had an update on that for almost a year.
Right, yeah, staff, we misinterpreted what the council's direction was, and we had them actively meeting, and they were meant to be an ad hoc committee. So if there's a specific area of town, we can
Yeah, we can take it offline, but just to underscore the point that you're making about the need, I believe the council recognized that, and that's why quite a while ago we said, yeah, let's reengage the future land use committee so we can the general plan committee, so we can reevaluate the future land use map and make any changes that are necessary to support that planning. So we're not unaware, but I'm a little bit worried that there's some concern being raised, but when we tried to kind of head that off a couple of years ago, where we're at. So we can talk later, though.
Okay, yep.
And if I can just tack on to what Corbin had said just now in terms of the master planning, we've been working with Dave Murphy in his shop and have actually engaged all of the city's consultants, your water consultant, your sewer consultants. We've engaged them for the studies here so that whatever's happening on Jones Ranch and all of that infrastructure is used by your same consultants, and they can plug that into the larger master plan for the larger West Bench area. And so we think that that'll be beneficial, and we'll see some synergies there just because we'll be able to steal from them a little bit, and they'll be stealing a little bit from us. So that's actually ongoing. We've actually already engaged them. And Corbin, and to clarify, and Corbin is absolutely right. I had a conversation yesterday with the city attorney and indicated to him what had been communicated to us, and I guess that hadn't been taken up through the line, and so catching it a little bit flat-footed. But it's not our intent to come and spoil the broth for anybody. We've been working with the Joneses for a couple of years, and we have a very substantial holding with them now, and taking aside the east of U-111, it's almost 900 acres, and we're working with them in partnerships. So we have, when we received a phone call from them, we took it at face value, and so that's why we're here. I wouldn't be here trying to get egg on my face if I hadn't had a couple of phone calls with the Jones family. I want you to know that that's not, and I actually was surprised that the other application was still, given what I'd heard, was actually still even being considered. So,
Well, Chris, we want to thank you for taking the time and coming in and keeping us updated on what your plans are.
we appreciate you. It's a long process, we know, but we love the west side of West Jordan. I probably have been involved in developing 500 or 600 lots out here already, and am excited to continue to move forward. So,
Well, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 9C, update regarding phase 2 of the 7800 South project. Dave Murphy. I think this should be short. I'm hoping that this is like 10 minutes. Unless council has a lot of questions.
That's it.
Well, I think if we just keep moving along here, we can get
It's
through.
one graphic, right?
We can get through this in
You can
10
just blow
minutes.
that up.
Okay, Dave, please proceed.
Okay, this is just an update on what the Phase 2 traffic control will look like in the future once we get lanes placed against the airport property for our reservoir site, heading westbound towards Airport Road. This is the traffic control plan that would be set up in Phase 2. Right now, we're in Phase 1, so everything's been moved away from the reservoir and the tank site. But in the future, the westbound lanes will move up close to the fence along the reservoir, and the eastbound lanes will move closer to the park property on the south side. What's interesting about the Phase 2 plan is that the median that is on the east side of the intersection going towards Bangerter will be removed, at least partially, back several hundred feet. And that's in this area back in here, so that the left turn movement can move across where that median is today and come into a new pocket here that is really in what would have been an eastbound lane configuration. So that's why all the barrels are there, to move that pocket over, so that the lefts going into Jordan Landing and coming down 4,000 West are opposed to each other, as they should be.
When is this Phase 2 supposed to start?
This Phase 2 is supposed to start somewhere in September. We do not have an exact date because of other conflicting utilities at the far west end near Airport Road. Those conflicts should be resolved in the rest of this month and into August. And those conflicts affect paving schedules. That's why I can't give you a date right now. All of this work and any Phase 2 work, we've asked the contractor to close off and shut down by October 15th this year, so that it's ahead of paving, plowing season, ahead of snowfall, and we will have to pick up the work in the spring.
Phase 3 will be the spring.
Phase 3 will be the spring. Phase 3 will be these acceptance lanes here, and some of the intersection work as well.
One caution, I think we want to make sure that as this progresses, to not have a situation that recently happened, all the lanes are lined up. So the striping is lined up from one side of the street to the other side of the street.
All temporary striping and current lane striping will have to change with lane configurations here, yes. Meaning they'll have to do temporary striping.
Right, but the inside lane, what the mayor's saying is the inside lane going eastbound doesn't line up with the inside lane when you cross 40th West.
Yeah, when they,
Yeah, in other words, you're looking at half the picture here. It's, I mean, the highlighted blue and red is only half the picture. We gotta see
Correct.
the east side of the intersection too.
Yes, and so when this lane configuration would be adopted and permitted, temporary striping comes with it. So not only are they working on tearing out the median and putting out the barrels, they're also working on any lane striping that needs to be obliterated and restriped at the same time. So that all takes place at the same time.
So how many lanes does this consist of then during this Phase 2 traffic control in each direction? You got 2 going west, 2 going east, or what do we have?
Contract mandates that you have 2 lanes in each eastbound and westbound direction. And that we have some turning capacity there at the intersection, so the lefts have to be there as well.
Will there still be right turns allowed from southbound to westbound coming out of Jordan Landing?
In this configuration, yes. The reason we got into trouble with that right turn lane was because of the water line work that had to be done.
Right.
And that right turn lane is back open right now,
So this will not,
if you haven't noticed.
I was told that.
So if you want to go drive it, it's back open.
I try to avoid it, but you know. So my other question though, this is prior to westbound traffic being back open along the south side of the airport, right? What will be the two-way street when we're done?
When you move into this phase, you'll be moving all the way to Airport Road. It will be back open along the fence line, all the way to Airport Road.
Okay, so this blue looks like it's heading
It's
southwest.
It's canted, but it would be closer
It
to
should
the
be,
fence.
so it's gonna be a straight
Straight shot.
From 40th to Airport, when will that portion be finished?
The portion up against the fence,
If I live on the
The
west
whole
side,
thing.
when am I gonna be able to drive from 40th to Airport without turning left?
hopefully by probably the end of September, beginning of October.
And that'll be two-way?
That'll just be the 2 westbound lanes in that configuration. The eastbound configuration still has to come around Airport Road and down New Bingham Highway still.
When's that gonna be open?
I
Not
don't
till
have that
next-
for you yet
next
in the
spring?
schedule. I don't have that for you yet in the
So it's
schedule.
still one
I
way.
can't tell you. They haven't figured it out yet either, the
Okay.
contractor.
The plan was to have it done this year.
Plan was to have it done. They've got the stub road that goes over to New Bingham almost ready to pave.
I guess that'd be my question, why can't we get all 4 lanes from 40th to Airport? Why can't they only do half the road?
Because that center section still has to be taken down and rebuilt. That orange section you're seeing right there, that goes on for 1,000 feet, and that's a lot of work.
That's what they're asking.
In the future, can we just plan that road projects will take twice as long as initially forecasted, and just forecast it there, and if you finish early, then we're all happy? You know, I mean, make it 2 summers.
If you don't mind 2-year projects,
Well, that's all I get is 2-year projects, so whether I mind them or not, if I expect them up front.
we
then
don't
everybody's happy.
normally get springtime weather that's the second wettest on record either.
Yeah,
And 30
agreed,
days straight of rain.
Yeah, agreed, we know that. By the way, it was a lot easier to hammer up campaign signs a month and a half ago than it has been the last couple of weeks.
Bet.
I've heard. Anyway. Yeah, or 3-year projects, like, you know.
Moving right along.
Any other further questions then for what's ahead of us? This is just a glimpse at one of the traffic control plans, and phase 3 probably is gonna be next year.
But phase 3 is just the stub road, right?
Phase 3 are
Phase 3
these,
is the
these are lane expansions here at the intersection, both sides.
Phase 2, I think, isn't that the stub road that ties in? That's phase 2.
Yeah, we're trying to get Stub Road in phase 2 and be completed before the end of this year, but we'll see. One other item of note, the contractor is in a day-to-day window with milling services, meaning to have milling services come in 6 to 8 weeks out, and I just wanted to give you this update so everyone's aware. Airport Road, they just lowered utilities so that they can mill and overlay that section as soon as they get a milling contractor on board. There are open windows that open up when another job out there drops off the schedule of a milling contractor, and so they'll call Kilgore and let them know, hey, we can come in 72 hours or 2 days from now or 3 days from now, and that will activate a mill and overlay on Airport Road almost immediately. So the traveling public will have about 48 to 72 hours notice of a milling contractor coming in and overlaying Airport Road. We're trying to get that done at night.
So what's our plan? What's our PR plan for that?
Our PR plan is that we're announcing that now and letting them know that now so that they understand that that is a possibility in an open window time frame from now over the next 2 months.
Is this meeting how we're letting them know that?
No, we'll be putting that on the website as well and broadcasting that out with Sean through public information.
What are we doing? There hasn't been a lot of emails on the 78. So people sign up to get updates on the 78 South, and I had somebody tell me there's only been like 3 emails that have gone out since the project started. So
I'll check with Sean on that and Maureen, because they've been handling that side of things on broadcasting that information.
Okay, 'cause I think we've got to do a better job at communicating, because we're catching residents off guard on our projects.
So how do they get that information who's in charge of giving them what to send out? Because they're just sending it out, right?
Maureen's been in contact with both myself and Greg Davenport on, as far as project management and what's being sent out.
There's little great changes, you write us too, in
Yes.
the journal, goes out once, it's only once a month, but.
When
are you
Kim was
giving-
here, she was putting the write-ups together. Sean has been putting 1 or 2 of those together as well.
Because if they could put some kind of a tentative schedule, and recognizing it's tentative, in the paper too, so that people could see that. That's for the 12 people that read the paper.
Okay. Any other questions? That's all I have.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, we'll move to item number 10, closed session. Somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we go into closed session for the reasons indicated on the agenda and adjourn from there.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Jacob, a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Discussion to the motion?
Nope.
Discussion to the motion, Councilmember Anderson?
We need a roll call vote, though.
We do. Well, I was trying to see if there was any more discussion, because your name's still on there.
Well, let's get a workshop vote.
Okay, roll call vote. Yes.
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 Aye.
Yes.